Well, it's always interesting when you're watching all the awesome hand gestures while everything's getting queued up and ready for the show. Everyone, welcome to the Newbcast Podcast for September 23rd, 2018. Joined by the usual hosts and guests and such. My name is Miss Michelle Jean. What exactly were you guys talking about while we were getting ready to go here?
I don't know. It might be dangerous for us to talk about it, given the subject matter. There might some fans of certain franchises might be frustrated.
Be prepared for derailment if we take any further steps. But yes, we should take further steps because all of those Earthbound fans who have never played Earthbound before got to enjoy it. It was awesome.
The words fire whack with me were uttered, and if that's as good a place as I need to start with me. Hi, by the way.
I suppose that's a great place to start. Our guest for this evening is Xalavier. I'm gonna slaughter your name again, sir. Xalavier Nelson. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. So, it sounds like that you've had your experience in a few different spots in the gaming industry. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a full-time narrative designer and game writer and game developer, and I also recently added a above full college course load to that. And so now I'm tired all the time. I work on, a bunch of stuff in a bunch of different capacities. I was recently announced as one of the writers for Strata, which is the source book for the Spire RPG, which is brilliant and is about dark elves fighting a resistance against the high elves that have come to erase their society and culture. I am also one of the principal narrative people for Hypnospace Outlaw, which makes a lot of waves. It's basically an alternate reality Y2K era internet, completely simulated, fully built, and that you patrol as an unpaid moderator. I do a whole bunch of independent projects, dealing with live games, such as my game Jeff Goldblum was concerned about your academic progress, and so you must tend to his menagerie of gentle mutant abominations, and also Billy Ocean Kills the Ocean, also you help, and also Billy Ocean Kills the Ocean, also you help too. Billy Ocean Returns Electric Boogaloo. I essentially do a whole lot of stuff for people if they will pay me, and it tends to get weird.
You're leaving out the part where there was wasn't there a pigeon orgy at one point?
That was in Billy Ocean Kills the Ocean 2, and that was because it was in Berlin, and I'm never running a role-playing game in Berlin ever again.
See, as soon as you say that, I'm a horrible person because Hatoful Boyfriend just popped into my mind. It was like, no.
One of the pigeons looked like Terry Crews.
Oh my goodness.
We're right there. We're right there.
Well, which is great. I mean, that's a ton of stuff that you're working on or have worked on, and that's a lot of experience, and we're glad to have you to just talk about the weird things that apparently we talk about for the next couple hours. Regardless, thank you.
Do you need any caffeine? Can we send you some caffeine? I feel like you could use some.
I actually had coffee for the first time recently, and I did some tweets about it, and I felt like if you've ever played Doom and you've hit that and you get that particular power up where your eyes blaze with light and you're an invincible god of destruction, I felt like that for about 10 minutes. And then I felt like I was going to die for the next 5 hours, which was a unique roller coaster of emotions. So, needless to say, I did more coffee. So I'm well acquainted with it.
You've got an IV drip at this point.
Yeah, I'm well acquainted with its many charms. Caffeine will be accepted, and I'll say, oh, you don't need to send that, but I'll totally use it. It's like another credenza. You can always use another credenza.
Oh dear. Yeah. See, it sounds like you did coffee the right way, so I'll give you that. That's quick learning on the coffee. That's yes, nice work. Coming back for this week, of the Newbcast, we would like to welcome back the Unabridged Gamer.
Hello.
I love
I'm
that.
Still playing.
I was gonna say, I love that you knew that I was talking about you. That you knew I was talking about you. You knew I was talking about you as soon as I started that.
I'm still playing terrible games. Now also on Twitch this time.
Oh my goodness, that last one was absolutely incredible.
It was something.
Yes.
So tell me, what is it like to find like 14,000 places that you can shoot enemies without having to worry about ever getting attacked?
It's amazing. I've turned it into like a mini game in of itself. For those of you who don't know, I've been live streaming Deck 13's Blood Knights, which Deck 13 already has had a spotty history between Venetica and Jack Keane. They're still around from what I understand, but they've had a rough ride. Blood Knights was their attempt at a budget title for PSN, Xbox Live, and Steam. And it's been an experience. We've talked to double talking monks who don't move their lips. There's 2 co-op characters, but only the one gets addressed as an actual human being. There's blatant racism towards vampires, but I'm not sure if they're actually going for a cultural commentary or not. There's almost no one around. The hub area that you're supposed to go back to doesn't hold anything besides merchants and a few fetch quests, except they're not really fetch quests, they're dispensing quests, because you dispense things throughout the town instead of grab things for people. And apparently the way to a guard captain's heart is to set 4 random torches on fire with your crossbow, because he's just too lazy to use a torch. And this isn't even the weirdest game that I had to talk about this week. Because while you have all been watching me play Blood Knights, and you can still see the replays on Twitch and on YouTube, the weird one I have been playing is Alone in the Dark 2008, the reboot that was for like Wii and PS3, and I've been playing on PC.
That look.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm actually almost through it. Here's the scary thing, though. If you like The Evil Within, this is like a primordial The Evil Within. There's an actual objective point to setting enemies on fire. It's an open world horror game, but there's also linear sections.
Wait. Alone in the Dark 2008, a partially budget title, was an open world game?
For parts of it. And not completely. Like, it wanted to be fully open world, and it's got a full, complete... I've spoke to a friend of mine who reviewed it back in the day, who actually loves it. He, like, considers it a treasure that no one acknowledges. And he was like, oh yeah, I've been to Central Park. They mapped it out precisely, 1-to-1 for this game. And the main enemies are cracks that will chase you, that you have to set on fire. Even though in the opening sequence, the cracks cause a hotel to fall apart and catch on fire. And also the cracks possess people. Because apparently, and I'm going to get into light spoilers, but trust me, the story is like the worst part. You just laugh at it, okay? So bear with me here. You were possessed by the devil for over a century somehow, because you got into the occult much. Because guess what? This isn't a reboot. It's a sequel to the original 90s game for MS-DOS. It's intended as a direct sequel. You apparently are the same guy, even though you look nothing alike. You're not ginger, you don't have any mustache, but you're still Carnaby. And now you're in New York, and you're being followed around by a woman who I could swear is being voiced by Discount Liara. Like, she's not the actual actress, but it's just Discount Liara. And there's melee combat where you have to move your mouse like it's Mountain Blade, but it's not completely. Like, you basically move your mouse to change your positioning for what you're going to do. So, like, you move a fire extinguisher to this for shoving. You do it like this for flocking people. There are puzzles where you have to solve everything with physics. And here's the irony. Out of everything that doesn't work in... Because, like, for PC, I have to use print screen to disembark cords and cables and ropes. Yeah, I have to hit print screen. And there's no way to rebind that either, unless you go into the INI files. And yet, the physics puzzles work beautifully. They've actually held up better than Half-Life 2's. Like, you legit, like, okay, there's an electrical cable in the water. I whisk it out. And you just do that. There's a part where there's a black goo that basically will swallow you up if you step in it. But it hates light. so you can use your flashlight, or you can use these otherwise completely useless glow sticks that you can stick to everything. And like there's a crafting system where you can use duct tape to attach almost anything to anything. You can make your bullets have firepower. You can transfer liquids between items so you can actually intuitively maximize your carrying space. You can use your health spray as a flamethrower. There's like legitimately creative ideas in this that are buried in a game that opens like a discount Uncharted trying to be a horror game at the same time. Like, I can completely understand why if you played the opening chapter and then immediately returned it, because it's garbage. But there's just, it's this weird dude. It's like with Star Wars The Force Unleashed, where they were so leaning into this physics engine stuff and trying to be open-ended while still being linear, that amazing things happen. Like during the initial car chase where you're outrunning New York collapsing basically around the park. There's a moment where you intuitively brake and do your sort of turn around to drift, but it's scripted without actually being scripted. Because you do that natural drift, you can see, oh shit, there's all this stone that's collapsing behind me. You immediately speed up and go on again. That's completely dynamic in the game's engine. Unfortunately, also because it's so dynamic, there's like a dozen ways to fail that car sequence, not on your own fault, but because there are AI drivers driving around panicking like actual New Yorkers who will slam you off the road without any discretion. And also, there are moments where the physics engine just doesn't work and you'll actually crash into things. But then there's like a physics puzzle where, oh, I need to get across this bus that's barely teetering on this thing. I need to drag these bodies to the one end so that it stays upright so that I can get across. There are moments of clarity where you can see that someone had some good ideas. But goodness me, is a mixed bag. And I'm actually very thankful for the game's most controversial and ironic feature, which is that you can fast forward. It's done like a DVD. You can just skip to any chapter. Your inventory will be changed as a result, but the thing is, it's so easy to reacquire inventory items that it's not really a problem. That's the one ironic thing, is that the reason I keep saying ironic, but it's the reason that you have so little inventory space, because there's always more stuff. You can be stocked up to like 100 bullets easily just in a room. Like, you just have to reopen a cabinet repeatedly and it just keeps magically appearing. But you still have so many enemies to face that it makes sense. There was one boss fight where I needed that many bottles of alcohol because I just kept having to throw it in this spider guy's face so that he would blow up. And also the voice acting for the most part is very much like Blood Knights, except, believe it or not, the main protagonist is voiced by Max Payne.
Whoa.
It's like almost every trope of the 7th gen, all the focus on graphics and tech, and all these different gameplay things that weren't really nailed down. All the good and all the bad in one game, except for multiplayer. There's no multiplayer. It's still available on Steam if you're curious, although supposedly the PS3 version is actually given more graphical effects than the PC version. It's a weird game.
So actually I have a question about that fast forward feature. So you can literally, this is something I've been talking to a lot of designers about, and it might be something we cover later on in the cast, but I've been talking to a lot of other game designers and game developers about how it is to re-experience games or pieces of games, because unlike a movie or a TV show, you can skip to an episode, skip to a moment. In games, if I want to get to an end game quest, I have to play through the rest of it, the requisite 50 hours. So you're saying that alone, and we've been talking about ways that we can structure our own work to allow for that, which is really hard with all of the other things you really have to account for in games. But you're saying that Alone in the Dark lets you do that? And it did that in 2008?
In an open world, quasi-open world. Basically, it does hub areas. That's how they got around it, is that there are moments when you're in a linear area, and there are moments where you're in an open world. Basically, there are these little hell penises, which is really the only way to describe them. There are these hell penises that you have to set on fire, and if you kill them, it gives you more abilities. Because here's the thing, there's a blinking button. You have to blink in the opening. Look up the Unskippable episode. You'll hear them mock it to hell and back, and completely legitimate, because basically you switch between 3 camera perspectives. There's the third person where you're using melee, where you kind of walk around like it's more traditional. Mm-hmm. There's when you're walking around with just your gun in third person, where it plays sort of like Resident Evil's drunk cousin. And then there's first person, which actually controls fine, but you have to blink away if someone spits poison in your eyes, or if an enemy bleeds on you or something like that. But there's the added bonus of where if you're in first person and you close your eyes for a second, you can see enemies. You can see their weak points because they have fissures because they have the cracks. And if you hit those cracks, you weaken them, which was another thing in 2008, like with games like Dead Space and stuff like that, where it was like, how can we make it so that it's not just headshots? I mean, in Alone in the Dark's case, it doesn't really work. You basically just want to hit some dumbass with a hammer or a shovel until they're down, and then hit them with one bullet, and you're good. But
it also sounds like a proto Alan Wake.
There's so many different games in this one game, and they're all fighting, struggling to get out. And I will warn you right now, I know the ending. Even the good ending sucks because they were so hoping for a sequel. They were planning on it. They were banking on it, and it did not happen. It never really was a thing. The last Alone in the Dark game was Alone in the Dark Illumination, which was terrible. Now THQ Nordic has the rights, so who knows what they'll do with it. And also, good on you, THQ Nordic. Keep buying all the dead IPs that no other publisher will touch. But this game is astounding. If you are an aspiring game designer or a current game designer, you need to play this just to analyze it, to take it apart piece by piece, because it is an astounding train wreck. It is as much amazing as it is horrendous. Because, like, one of the main enemy types are these tiny little roach guys that annoy you to hell and back, and they just spawn infinitely. But then there's stuff like the black goo. There was a part in a museum where I had to shoot chandeliers to make them glide back and forth so that there would be light on the ground so I could traverse. And it works. When it works beautifully. It actually feels revelatory. And the fire system. They use fire as an actual. You can destroy doors with it. You can set furniture on fire and use that as a weapon, and it will actually be more effective than the katana sitting right next to it. I'm sorry, I have a lot of thoughts on this madness.
Knowing what I do of game development, like the stuff you describe, especially the dynamic elements, for 7th gen, that basically killed them. Enabling all of those really weird interactions. I can already see like the room where people are talking about like, yeah, you can set the couch on fire, and then you can pick up the couch and you can hit someone with it and it will set them on fire, and they'll tumble to someone else. Like that from that meeting, there was just months of crunch where someone was like, okay, we can set a couch on fire now. And then everybody was like, okay, good. We also only have 512 megabytes of memory. So good luck.
Yeah.
And somehow they got to fit on the Wii. That's the thing. From what I understand, the Wii version is the full like 360 PS3 I can think of. Well, only two other cases I can think of was Quantum of Solace and Spider-Man Shared Dimensions. Those are the only two ones where I can think of where there was a direct Wii port and I didn't hear anything bad about it. That's pretty astounding in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's really odd. This game sounds frankly incredible. I'm adding it to my Steam wish list.
Sold.
Sold. And that's the thing. It's the game's anniversary. It released in 2008, so it's 10 years old now. And I tried it on a whim.
Believe it or not, like this sounds like if it was made with modern technology with tools available, like UE4 or something, this could genuinely be a hit. It's basically Evil Within. It's basically so many other games that have come since. And it sounds like it still has things to show us.
Yeah. So maybe it's just a title that came before its time, and because of that, it came off as an odd title that just didn't hit the mark. But in today's market, it's a whole different story.
The shooting stars burn brightest.
Only shooting stars break the mold, Elijah.
And all that glitters is gold.
Right. Well, that said, Elijah, welcome to the show.
Yes. Hi, I'm the Unbridged Gamer. As you can tell, I talk about weird shit.
He's unabridged.
He is unabridged, as you saw. Also, joining us tonight is one of the founding members of the Newbcast Podcast, Dizzy. Welcome to the show.
Oh, hi.
How's it going?
It's been going pretty well. I have continued to immerse myself in Persona 5, and I might be drowning. It's very much possible.
I saw earlier that you're sitting there going, I gotta get the air. I gotta get the air.
I feel like I'm playing Persona more and more just so that I can complete the game and be done with it. And I feel really awful about saying that because the material inside Persona is very much enjoyable, but it's just so much.
It's 90 hours.
It's I have to commend you on that because in my personal opinion, if a game is at a point where it does not continue to grab me, I will not play it. If it gets to the point where it's like, I gotta play this. No, we did that once. It was called World of Warcraft. I'm never going to play another game again where I feel like I'm being forced to play the game. I want to play the game, and if I don't want to play it, then I'm not going to play it. So, because you're willing to do that, hats off to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm not really feeling any moments of, man, I really don't want to play this part. And I think that's where the difference is, because it gives you such a variety of different content to enjoy, whether you're outside of the metaverse and trying to gain skills and building up your confidence and having that plan out. I enjoy that, and then I get a segment of that, and then, I'm not really feeling those, so maybe I'm going into Mementos, or maybe I'm going into the Palace, and I'm going to spend the day there and enjoy the combat elements, which are also very enriching and very engaging in their own route. And how that all interacts with each other. Like, I never feel like there's a moment of, man, I have to do this. I do legitimately enjoy all of it. It's just, I mean, I want to play other games on my channel too.
Yeah, it seems like anyone else that dives into that, like, Persona franchise, like, that is a deep well that they spend a lot of time on their channels. So, yeah, I can understand that mindset.
Yeah, eventually I'll do a speed run of it. It's what the world record's 22 hours. So I mean that seems reasonable for a stream. Just gotta plan it out. Just gotta work through the segments, and it'll be fine.
I'm looking forward to your pro burger strats. Just like leveling up that job.
Oh yeah.
There you go. See, that's
it's a big bowl and doing a lot of competition. Just get as many sets as possible as quickly as possible. That's it.
So besides on stream,
Yes.
what else have you been playing?
Besides on stream, I went back to explore some more Destiny 2.
Okay.
I got it on launch and played through the main campaign, enjoyed it, and pretty much did nothing with it afterwards, mostly because I was having issues with my PlayStation deciding to connect to the internet. I have proceeded to determine that my personal PS4 does not like Wi-Fi whatsoever.
Okay.
So if I ever decide that I want to play that multiplayer, I have to have it cabled, and there's a whole bunch of awful rigmarole that requires my house. So, needless to say, I will be playing it off stream if I ever do play it, when I play it. But the new expansion, I keep on hearing good things about. I want to go and explore that. And I want to play a little bit more with the way that Destiny is designed to be played, which is the whole, we're going to give you a bunch of content. We know you're only going to come to my game once every 2 or 3 months. So we're going to give you this nice segment, this nice burst of material that you're going to enjoy. Save the people who are going in for PvP all the time. And for those people, there's lots of good material there. But I haven't gone through Destiny that way before. When I went through the original Destiny, they already had a full expansion out. I already had some idea as to what I was doing with all of that material, and I ripped through all of it and I was done. I never gave it a chance again afterwards. So now that I'm starting to get into the remaining content, now that the main campaign is done, I'm excited to see if I enjoy it and if it's a payment system that I can see being of interest to me personally. I know a lot of other people do enjoy it, but I don't know if it's better than, the subscription model. That's the test.
Okay. Interesting. And subscription models and such, I think it's maybe something that will be peeking back up in the show later on, so it's funny that you should mention that. Yes.
Maybe.
Anything
what
else?
What have you been doing?
What have I been playing? So, of course, Guild Wars 2. ArenaNet just dropped episode 4 of season 4, A Star to Guide Us, which has redirected us to the main protagonist of, this season, I guess. It's one of the Elder Dragons, which is kind of one of the overarching like baddies of the franchise right now. And the story took some interesting turns. There was some foreshadowing on death that were to occur. There was a reunion with characters that you probably would not have guessed would have happened.
Oh, was Felicia Day back?
Felicia Day was not back, but her character's I don't know if you want to call it master apprentice type thing, like the master of Zoja was there. Snap.
Mm-hmm.
Snap was there. There was one other one that I was really excited about, but the overall like storytelling, like it was a really interesting story. I don't know if it was the strongest one of the season, and also I have to say that I really, really, really hate when games artificially make things more difficult than they actually have to be.
How did they do it in this go?
Okay, so at the very end of the chapter, you're in the mists. You're in one of the realms of the undead, right? And things are exploding around you. You have to get back out. You have to get back to your reality. Yeah. I know that Hippo got to listen to me rant about this already, too, because he was with me that night. It was bad. Like, he heard a lot of me rant about this. What ended up happening, as you're trying to get out, like, you're kind of in this alternate, like, reality of, like, different rules to physics and everything else. You could float and whatnot to try to get to your exit. And you had this invisible wall. It was a storm, but it was an invisible wall that was behind you. And you had, like, things that would instantly kill you, and this wall pushing you to get to the edge. And it just felt like they didn't know how they were trying to push people out of the mists, and this was their way of doing it, and it kind of fell on its face a bit because it was frustrating. And it was frustrating for more than just me. I know there were other players I've spoken to that were incredibly frustrated with how they were being instantly killed or what have you, trying to get out of the mists.
They were the Destiny. It was a strike or a raid for Rise of the Iron Lords that was like this. They had a bit where there was stuff that would be moving and stuff like that. I wonder if they were trying to emulate that.
Maybe. It's possible. I think. Well, and the idea like a storm or like an invisible wall that's kind of pushing you towards an exit, that's not an unheard of mechanic. But I don't think we've seen that in a lot of more recent games. Usually that's an older mechanic that's been used to try to push people along, the moving screen or what have you. And I think there was a way.
Nobody likes scrolling levels.
Yeah.
Nobody likes scrolling levels. Let's be fair.
I think.
And this is just the same thing in 3D.
Right, like they could have done anything. Like the fact that there were branded that were exploding and whatnot around you, trying to kill you. Like that could have just intensified as you were, if you were to stay in a place, unless you were running along. There were so many different things they could have done, and yeah, I was salty. We'll just put it that way. But that was probably the only complaint. I thought there were some nice little tidbits and nods to things in Guild Wars lore, which was really cool. We got to see something from Guild Wars 1 in there because of the way the rifts and everything else worked, and the way the space-time continuum kind of got ripped apart. It was so overall, it was. I was intrigued by it. I was interested in it. I found myself still going back to the map. It's still not as good as A Bug in the System. That's probably still my favorite, but it was. If I had to choose a second, this was my second. Well, very close second. Seeing Palawa Joko get his face eaten off was pretty cool too. Beyond Guild Wars, the other game I played a little bit of is Recover My Hard Drive Simulator. I mean, that wasn't a simulator.
That wasn't a simulator, no.
No. No, because of that hard drive situation, I only got time for one other game the last couple weeks, and was Warhammer 40k Space Marine.
That's a underappreciated gem if there ever has been one.
Yeah. I did the multiplayer, like the Horde campaign, or like the Horde missions with Elijah and another individual who, I mean, it was okay. I didn't know if I necessarily cared for the Horde, but the way it worked out with the Hordes running at you and whatnot. But I heard that the campaign was so much better. I'm like, screw it, we'll give it a shot. So I gave it a couple hours, maybe 3 hours, and it was pretty satisfying, you know, kicking an orc in the face or blowing its head off with a sniper rifle or using the chainsaw blade. Like any of those.
By executing enemies.
The executing was so good. It felt so good. Like the first time I took an orc and just shoved the chainsaw blade through him, and it lifted him up, and you just saw the blade grind in him. It's like, ooh. Like just kind of reeled back a little bit, but it was just so good. It felt so good.
I'm glad that we know of your love for chainsaws. If there's anything that I really appreciate about Warhammer 40k Space Marine, it's how it is so extra. Like it is. There's so many games that try to normalize the world of Warhammer or Warhammer 40k, and what Warhammer 40k did, which I think it actually affected the direction of Warhammer games going forward, or Games Workshop games going forward, as you kind of see in Warhammer Vermintide. But in Warhammer 40k Space Marine, the artillery shells have church windows on them, and they're about as large as your player character, who is themselves basically what would happen if a G.I. Joe ate another G.I. Joe and like decided to work out a little bit. Just like slim down, lean up. It's incredible excess, and I love that it took that absurdity to the hilt, and it's neat to see how that has affected the franchise going forward.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I thought a lot of the stuff that did it with 40k was and Space Marine was great, and the different things that you could do with it. I think another thing I really enjoyed was when your character was, for instance, got jetpacks, and you were able to start doing the jump and smashes and whatnot, and the way that your combat got to vary a bit, so it wasn't too repetitive, was a nice touch too. If you didn't have that, as satisfying as it is to blow up orcs, that could only go so far. The fact that they added some variant to your combat, I think, helped the game quite a bit, and it can keep a player enticed and wanting to continue on through the campaign. So I very much enjoyed the campaign portion of the game, if I did not enjoy the multiplayer that much. Looking at you, Elijah.
I like it all. I do think that there should have had executions in multiplayer, and I do think that the enemy should have been a little bit less bullet spongy, but otherwise I like it all.
Yeah. Yeah, the bullet sponging in multiplayer was a gripe.
And I have to admit, you're a little bit extra sensitive to it as a result of WoW, because everything is super spongy.
Oh,
wow.
Absolutely. Well, depending on what you're playing too, like, there's so many different things that try to up the difficulty by making your characters as sponges. Like, when I was playing the multiplayer, I was purposely shooting orcs in the face. Now, normally, when you shoot something in the face, it dies. Not these orcs. Nope. They just kept running at you. It's like, excuse me.
They drank their Ovaltine.
It's like, excuse me, sir, I shot you in the face. You can die now. But no, that's not what happened.
That always frustrates me. I think that's a big reason I didn't get on with Vision. And Destiny, I had sort of a similar problem as well. If you're playing Borderlands and you have a good enough gun and you're leveled up enough, you can one-shot something. You can essentially kill it by being good. But when you get to the point where, like, due to arbitrary numbers and damage things, point-blank shotgunning or shooting someone in the face doesn't work. It detracts from the overall effect of the game world. It makes it feel more artificial in a way that really grates on me. So
Sure.
yeah, that's a real problem I've had with some more modern RPG FPS hybrids.
I think, yeah, you're absolutely right, because, I mean, there's a certain level of immersion that you're trying to have, and if you do something that you know should kill something that in this game that you're playing and it doesn't, it's just, it ruins that immersion factor. It's just like, well, what am I supposed to do? You know?
Also, because it's arbitrary. It isn't like the guy is wearing a helmet. He's a level 28. Therefore, level 28s can't be shot in the face.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not to mention having different weapons, it can be an incredibly different experience. So, like, I'm expecting if you give me, you know, like, I don't know, a semi-auto rifle or something, a few shots and I'll be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, like, I think hand cannons in Destiny 2, for example, yeah, you can get a one shot off of that and it feels good and you'll knock them out fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at other weapons and you're like, why is it that I've unloaded 3 clips here on the same creature and it's not working?
Mm-hmm.
Same power level and everything. Like, yeah, there's balancing and there's tuning that's done for the sake of competitive play and for the sake of like the top end stuff. And then as a casual player, you're wondering why these weapons have been kind of ignored and treated like they shoot, you know, I don't know, BBs or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so immersion can... I wish there was a way to find a balance to it, and I don't know. Maybe it's just like, to Nelson's point, like the arbitrary levels, numbers and whatnot. If something is a higher level, like give it the appearance that it has a helmet or something that's protecting it, instead of just an arbitrary number.
Well, the easiest solution, if you still want to have bullet sponge enemies for whatever design reason, is you animate that as they take damage, armor pieces fall off. As soon as you do that, it immediately fixes the problem. Because the thing is, it's still the same exact enemy type, but it's about game feel more than anything else.
Yeah. At least, it would make sense at least, right? And it's not a health bar. That would be, yeah, I agree. But I guess someone that has more experience with that could probably speak on how difficult that would actually be to do.
Is this you plugging binary domain again, Eli?
I mean, I'm not, but it was just recently. I don't know if it still is, but it was just recently in a Humble Bundle. I think it's still going right now, and it also comes with Crazy Taxi. But the main thing is binary domain, and that one you don't play the multiplayer. You just ignore the multiplayer. It never happened. It just never freaking happened. Play the campaign. You meet Jennifer Hale as the lovely Japanese sniper woman and the dapper Frenchman and the very, very British take on Troy Baker that they have, and you all just blow everything up, and it's fun.
I mean, not to go to the lowest denominator here, but you had me at Crazy Taxi, so...
Nice.
Whatever works.
So before we get going with our topics, because that's all I had played the last couple weeks, there's a couple things that we wanted to circle back on that were not added to the template, either because it's a circle back on and just touch on quick, or because of the news that broke coming into the weekend. I suppose...
Don't worry. You guys don't see the templates. You don't have to worry about the rules.
We know the rules, and we'll just break them. I suppose first up, we had a huge rant and conversation and thoughts around loot boxes. And we, in particular, were talking about the Overwatch loot box system and an article that Polygon put out. Well, since the podcast a couple weeks ago, EA has seen some blowback in Europe in the way of legality, and it's looking to be a much bigger problem now, because they're challenging, was it Belgium?
Yes. Belgium made some strong action originally, and before this podcast, like 2 weeks ago, the latest news was that EA was going to have some sort of agreement and try to get out of the legal dispute. What's happened now?
Well, last I heard, there were 15 countries in the state of Washington that have signed on to investigate whether or not the loot box system is actually gambling, and then the legalities of that. And if they find that it is gambling and they're not abiding by gambling laws and regulations, EA could be looking at a lot of fines.
Yes, with the ultimate team system that they've been injecting into everything. If them and 2K are looking to be hurt the worst, probably, because Activision has done it in a passive sense, but EA is always hammering on, and 2K has. I mean, we all heard about 2K NBA 2018, which was, or 2017. I forget which one it was at this point, because whenever I hear 2K NBA, it's just an article about how bad the microtransactions are, how it's a hellscape of. You either have to grind your life away, or you have to grind your life away in real life and give us money. For the game that we already sold you.
Well, and what makes it worse about that is, like, in the case of 2K Games, is that they were asking their fans to call and write their lawmakers trying to advocate for loot boxes, and it's just like,
Blizzard is too. There was a thing where they actually said something like that. I saw it in a PC Gamer article. It was just outright shameful. They were less blatant about it than 2K. 2K has apparently lost all shame recently, which is shocking, because last gen, they were one of the classier publishers, but now it's just like, nah, they just want money, and that's all they want. But yeah, Blizzard was kind of like, well, you could tell your representatives that you'd like your loot boxes, because they had to get rid of them. There's one country, I think it's Belgium, where they can't actually have
Belgium dropped it. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, you can only earn them through experience points now. You can no longer just buy them.
And I don't think it's just. I think, was it Finland that also really got into it? As you can tell, this is last minute. But I'm pretty sure Finland also got into the fray with it, because it's Finland. They backed up what Belgium was saying and started their own investigation. Of course, a lot of these articles are from sites that are native to those particular countries, so we're kind of getting all reports secondhand through these sites. So the validity is hard to double check on, but the fact that there's 15 nations, including the state of Washington, included to make it 16 full groups. At least last I checked, Washington folk spoke English.
Washington's involved in it. They've been one of the states most against. I mean, they were the ones who made net neutrality be a state law, even if the national government wasn't going to do it. Mm-hmm. They are actually pretty and Hawaii's likely to be right behind, because Hawaii's been banging the horn on this for almost as long.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm kind of surprised that Hawaii didn't sign on with Washington on it, because you're absolutely right, and they've made noise about it before being an absolute issue back during the Star Wars Battlefront 2 situation. So
yeah, I'm excited and I'm a little concerned, because I think on one side of things, this is an important and necessary conversation for us to have at this level, as to, like, how do we feel as a society about whether or not this is gambling. The concern is that if they end up saying, hey, this is gambling and we need to have controls on this, that immediately opens the floodgates for other possibilities. And we'll deal with those possibilities if that comes up. Are all games bad? Are violent games bad? Things like that. But the fact is, we've been forced into this situation because this is what developers have done. So however this ends up resulting is kind of outside of anybody's hands at this point.
Yeah.
It's outside of the developers' hands at this point.
But yeah, the barn door is open. Every publisher is going to be feeling this as soon as the ball drops.
And the thing is, there's actually, you can see a couple of really interesting common links here. EA tried various monetization strategies. They were the ones who spearheaded the push
Project
against
$1.
used games back in the 7th gen with the whole, you have to have this special code to access multiplayer or whatever, that the industry also got behind for a little bit until something came along and they moved away again.
Day one DLC as well.
2K also had similar DLC what's the right term for it? Also had similar DLC and microtransaction and basically financial searching. Both are huge multinational corporations with gigantic overheads who were searching for financial strategies, and in a few of their titles hit big. FIFA had Ultimate Team, and 2K has had both the insane, absurd, incredible success of GTA Online, as well as their NBA 2K thing with the whole reboot in, I think it was 2012 with NBA 2K12 and so on. They really hit upon something great, and they pushed it further and they push it further, and they try to bring it into their other franchises to varying degrees of success. And combining the cost of those initiatives, having the Ultimate Team system in a game that isn't FIFA, it requires development design to implement. It requires a whole lot of resources to maintain. Same thing with a GTA Online-like structure or an RPG-like balancing of your character and the entire meta game with a 2K game. And when you combine those cost-heavy, effort-heavy efforts with uncertainty, not only do you get into this really weird financial position where it's, oh crap, this doesn't work with all of our other things, you also run into this, what we're now just seeing as regulatory trouble, where you pushed it as far as you could and are now getting blowback for it on a commercial front and now a legislative front. AAA development has been getting into an unsustainable place for a long time now, and we're seeing a whole lot of reactions to that idea. We're seeing subscription programs come from individual publishers like EA with their EA Access program or Game Pass for Xbox. They're trying to find a way to do this on a large-term basis, but if they can't find these ways, or as we're seeing in the case of Finland and Belgium, if the blowback is significant enough, we're going to get into a place where what we currently see as the AAA game, what we see as the norm, it's going to have to change, either in terms of the games that are actually produced or how often they're produced.
I'd say it's going to have to happen regardless. And the thing is, you're already starting to see some, I don't want to call them vultures, but the birds are sort of soaring around. Because think about how many mid-tier, like AA projects have been getting boxed releases that have been successful. Like Divinity, Original Sin, pretty much everything Obsidian developing. Focus Home Interactive games are actually getting boxed releases at rural Walmarts like I've got. And they're actually selling. It's gotten to the point now where if you actually can produce the product and not have to worry about getting as many sales as like Square Enix or EA or 2K needs, you can be ahead of the game. It's the landscape is evolving, and there are people who are catching up to it, who are staying savvy. But the thing is, the big guys don't seem to have noticed it. It's sort of like a giant moving in slow motion, and the giant hasn't got on to the fact that he's about to step on a trap yet, but all the little mice beside him have already moved on. And
I think that's a good analogy. And I'm mainly wondering how the player base is going to react when you get into a situation like Assassin's Creed Origins did really well for Ubisoft. I think it was their best-selling Assassin's Creed game yet. Mm-hmm. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they said that's going to be that might be the last Assassin's Creed game for several years. And what they're going to do is they're moving to this live content model where they're going to continue to sell things for it, do free content updates. As you mentioned, the landscape is changing to live models, to expanding content, to weird experiments like Prey's Mooncrash DLC. So seeing the effect that will have on the types of designs and the frequency of big AAA games, especially that we see from that space, would be really interesting.
I completely agree. If I recall, wasn't Microsoft doing that with Halo as well, where they're looking at a live model going into
Halo Infinite?
Yeah.
The whole engine's about it being big and open world. They showed off the tech before they even announced what the story's about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I think it's instead of having a franchise that's coming out with a title every single year, I think that might actually benefit those publishers too, because they're not gonna wear themselves out and burn themselves out on those franchises, right? If there isn't an Assassin's Creed for every, if we have to wait 2 or 3 years per installment, wouldn't that be better in the long run? I mean, they're gonna have to do things to try to fill in the gaps a little bit, and the live models is probably gonna have to be a way to do it. But aren't we more inclined to actually buy those installments when they come out too?
It depends. The value worth of live content updates is a big, because like with the discussion with Destiny, like there's some people who felt like it was really worth it, but there were also people who burned. I was there day one with Destiny, and there were a ton of people friggin' pissed off about the Dark Below because, and it's been later revealed, apparently it was 9 weeks worth of crunch. That it was made in 9 weeks. So that's why it was so slapdash.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had no way of knowing. And then there's the season pass quandary. There's all these variables that we aren't completely certain about. And also, in regards to Assassin's Creed taking 2 to 3 years, while it can be feasible, the thing is, I actually had to do an article years back about Assassin's Creed, back when it was getting near the point where it collapsed right around with Unity and it was going to happen no matter what. Ubisoft has basically just been piling studios on top of each other.
Sure.
They've recently started to shift it a little bit, like the current one is being led by the studio that was the lead for Syndicate. They're basically, instead of it being a lead team, there's a lead studio. And they're outsourcing to a lot of other places, which, I mean, for countries like Singapore, that's a great thing because there's now more jobs for game development and stuff like that. But it's also just sort of spreading out to the point that a single Assassin's Creed game easily takes around 1,000 people to produce, and they keep making them bigger even though there's no reason for it. Because like Odyssey, oh yeah, it's like twice or even more the size of Origins. Why? I hear about people taking like 80 hours to get through Assassin's Creed Origins. That's enough. You don't need to keep making it big, and which is one of the biggest problems, that we keep making bigger worlds instead of deeper ones, because bigger is something that you can put on a box art. You can't just put on a box, our AI is this much more reactive. Our flame system is more realistic. You can't really sell that to people. So
this is where we start to get into the science of scale, which is really interesting because I've studied Ubisoft's production techniques for a while now. So when you're operating at that scale, previously, as you mentioned, you'd have these lead teams, and they would make one game, and that A team, as it were, would move on to the next game, and then there would be a B team who would release a game in interim. That's how Call of Duty was produced for a while. You'd have Treyarch and then Infinity Ward, Treyarch and then Infinity Ward, switching off each time. What Ubisoft has done, the thing that other studios are now trying to reposition to do, but are having some growing pains with because it takes a while to spin it up, is they are making games where essentially every one of their studios around the world, like as you mentioned, around 1,000 people, is working on the game at the same time with a very, at this point, polished production pipeline to make that possible. But what that means is when you have that many people working on a single production, is that for it to be worth it, it needs to be huge. There needs to be enough space for each studio to own something. There needs to be enough space for basically all of this stuff to be put in. So it's both an idea of what they can sell, as well as simply what's feasible with that many people working on a thing. The second major thing that you're looking at is that that content can't be incredibly deep, or at least it would be very difficult. And the reason for that is we see deep worlds and deep narratives created when there is a strong single creative direction. If you have that creative direction spread across 8 studios, it can get real messy real fast. However, if you instead have 7 regions, each one owned by a series of different studios that are all supposed to be angled to hit a certain target, yeah, you can achieve that huge, massive game target. You can achieve that baseline narrative to a high degree of fidelity and polish, and you can create live content for that game after release. But the exact sort of things that people are asking for from AAA now, for example, the mythical one city block game, where it's one city block that's detailed in exquisite, meticulous construction. The way studios are organized, the things that they can build feasibly at least that we've seen demonstrated to date, it just can't provide that vision.
Mm-hmm.
So what needs to change to make that take place? If that's where the demand is.
Well, first, the demand needs to be demonstrated, because at that scale, you also get some risk-averse moves. You don't want 1,000 people to work on a game that doesn't sell, because at least 500 of those people are going to be out of a job once the game doesn't. So the first thing is you need to demonstrate need, which indies tend to do quite well, which is why you'll see, for example, we're seeing a whole lot of innovations, quote unquote, in AAA that were adopted by indies 4 or 5 years ago. Not only because that's the average development cycle for a AAA game, but because these indies did super well, such as like Gone Home or so on. They did super well. Suddenly we start to get new focus on environmental storytelling in AAA 4 or 5 years later. That isn't an accident. They saw that people liked that sort of thing in a world, and then they provided it with their pipelines. So first you have the demonstration of need, and then you simply have to have a desire on the part of the company to provide that thing, along with the assurance that they can sell it. A small team in Portland saying, hey, we made this game about this teen, and you go into your house and you explore the artifacts left behind to unpiece a story, that can work. But like if Ubisoft, Montreal, Paris, Singapore, and Toronto are all working on the same game, it gets real ridiculous. So you need to create a specific environment, a bespoke environment, as it were, with this production pipeline you now have to provide worlds, as well as some sort of lead creative direction on artistic, narrative, and design level to ensure that that the depth they're providing doesn't clash, because that's a very real danger as well. It's essentially just a whole lot of complicated decisions that need to be both proven out as that they're worth it, as well as committed to by the company themselves. And based on the current direction, I'm not sure we're going to move that way for some time yet.
I think, well, the thing about some of that live, like kind of circling back onto the live model and where it could potentially work or what have you, though, we do already kind of see that in some games where it does work, or it's been the rejuvenation to allow teams to put out pieces of content at a time to expand the life of a game. Kind of looking at Guild Wars again. The Living World seasons is live content. They don't charge for it, but that's what it is. It's they have traditional expansion packs, right? And between the traditional expansion packs, they have Living World stories, and they can vary from the expansion packs, and they're rolled out in every 6 to 8 weeks. But it's basically the live model. They just don't charge for it unless you don't log in while that living season's running. Then you have to pay for it. But like this week, the episode came out. I logged in. I got it for free. So with that said, with the people logging in and the amount of active accounts, so one of the big things about that is you're trying to keep players engaged, right? It's with the active accounts and the amount of people logged in, they always see a spike to some degree every single time they roll out another chapter. So the idea that live content might be an option, it just so that you don't have 3 studios trying to pump out a game every single year. It could work. I hate the idea of having to pay for all these mini expansion packs, but we already get DLC that we pay for or whatnot. So,
and that's gonna be a perfect space for a subscription model or a feasible Assassin's Creed 03. We're already seeing season passes basically move that way because DLC. but the equivalent, it's also getting more scheduled. So Marvel's Spider-Man, they announced that October, November, December, you get a new spike of Spider-Man every one of those months for that DLC season pass price. So the way we currently look at like buying a TV show, we subscribe to the network that's on, or we buy it piecemeal once it's finished, or buy the complete collection once it's finished as well. I think you're right. We could very much run into a situation where, with live content, it's like, hey, Assassin's Creed 03, you buy the Assassin's Creed pass and you get access to, for the next 4 or 5 months, this stream of Assassin's Creed content and story and so on. And for my part, I know quite a few folks who would buy it even if they never used it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just the idea of supporting their game and whatnot. Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right.
And if I might add, this is something that we've kind of been glancing at as an industry for a while. I mean, think about all the games where it's like, oh, we released one extra DLC episode after release, but clearly there's the infrastructure for more. I mean, Dead Space 2 and 3 did it, Batman Arkham City did it, and then Arkham Knight kind of tried. They failed, but in a way that actually educated a lot on how to not do that. So it's not like it's the craziest thing ever, but publishers have kind of been learning how to do it. As far as actually making just a subscription model for certain franchises, I mean, that would, in my honest opinion, as much as I see potential problems there, I love the idea that would also open up more doors for experimental stuff. Because like you're saying, they have to have a general blanket concept nailed down because of just how many people. But if it's a subscription service, that means smaller things. Because that's what's happened with Netflix. You really wouldn't get Stranger Things on a traditional television network. They wouldn't have gone for that. But because they actually had the freedom to do that, they've done it. And they recently did it again with Dragon Prince and with Maniac. Maniac has been getting good reception, and I can see why. And it's a limited series. It's a limited series styled after 80s cinematography, seemingly using dated tech to even record it. But it's getting a good reception, and it's turning a net positive for them in terms of getting more people watching. So that could really work. There is, however, one really big potential downside that I want to speak to from personal experience of playing a game that's a games as a service title, and that is Star Wars Battlefront 2017. Because here's the thing, because of the loot box, because there was a controversy that screwed things up a bunch and delayed things, almost all of the content that has been released was in the game day one or almost finished day one. I mean, there are even I've just uploaded a video last night about all the good content that people have found at the various stages. There were audio files for characters that have now mysteriously vanished. We're not sure if they're even going to happen because as soon as there was a single rough patch, EA has basically seemingly thrown up their hands. The Clone Wars content is going to drop, but besides that, it's not really clear what else is going to happen. And it's not even like it's hard. There's a guy who recently made a mod that enables Conquest as a full game mode in Battlefront 2. He managed to do that with the limited tools that are available for fiddling with the Frostbite engine as a user. So it's not like this stuff is impossible, but just because there was some difficulty, because there was some roughness at launch, if they just cut off supply, then it's a problem. You also have the CBS access issue of, okay, we started a subscription service, we have like one thing that people actually want. That's the other flip side. You have to be wary of stuff like that. You need to make sure that there's actually a breadth of content that's worthwhile. Which is why I'm very excited for Games Pass, and also honestly excited for what they're doing on Origin right now, because I know that we're all supposed to hate Origin, but they've got Obsidian games in. They keep getting indie games in. They keep getting all of these very good titles that are niche that now, not only are they now on Origin, so they can sell them normally, but also it incentivizes people to give EA money, and subsequently the developers are getting some money from this other platform. It's basically the best competition I've seen against Steam in years. So there are ways to make this work, but I'm very terrified of us having the same issue as what we're seeing right now with like Bethesda has a launcher, Ubisoft has a launcher, all of BattleNet is suddenly now getting Call of Duty. So,
Well, what's really gonna push that effort even further, right? Fortnite. Which is very just frustrating for developers because your Unreal account is connected to Fortnite if you ever play it even once. So if people try to hack your account for Fortnite, even if you basically never play it, they're just trying to get like usernames and passwords, it might lock you out of being able to make your game. But aside from that, the idea that Fortnite basically was able to single-handedly come in and not only tell Steam no thank you, but Google is going to establish a landscape where everybody looks around and, hey, if we're selling, as Elijah mentioned, things that people want, and we have enough of it, we can actually separate ourselves from the storefronts that previously dominated our existences. So GOG.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get, but really, what you're saying here is we're going back to the early 2000s. Except instead of it being in a box, it's now going to be a dozen different accounts that you have to have on your password manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the big things that I had to complain about talking about the launches a few weeks ago. That's, yeah, absolutely. That caveat with Fortnite is an interesting addition to that entire topic, but yeah, I mean, we're right back at password keepers.
I mean, it doesn't sound like the most, but what's going to happen is Ubisoft. So Bethesda is not selling Fallout 76 on Steam. It's only going to be on their own launcher. Origin is offering all of their own incentives, being with Origin and paying into a subscription model. Incentives that are extremely attractive, especially for these big games. You'll get Battlefield 5, the full thing, day one. Anthem, full thing, day one.
Before day one.
Before day one.
Early, you get them early. It ranges between a week to 5 days early usually with EA games now. And the amazing thing is they even figured out how to do it for the little guy. At first they struggled with their trial system, but now it's just gotten bigger. So you pay a little, you get like maybe 10 hours access. You pay on the premium tier of $15 a month or whatever it is for a year, I forget, and you get early access. You get the deluxe edition. You basically are getting every single thing, but only so long as you have that subscription at that tier. It's kind of crazy because we're also seeing publishers trying to do that just normally, like with Tomb Raider, how if you pre-ordered it, you got it early. I believe it was Gia Jackson wrote it on Kotaku that
I saw that.
Yeah, there are 2 versions of the game now, and one will release earlier. And you're seeing growing pains with this because actually Shadow of the Tomb Raider accidentally leaked one of its original endings that was supposed to be cut from the game entirely. It was still in the code completely. Someone was able to get it to load. So there's going to be growing pains with that. But yeah, essentially a game's release date is no longer actually its release date. In terms of both post-launch support changing things, like with Final Fantasy 15 or No Man's Sky, and in terms of how early one can play it, which is, I'm going to tell you this right now, part of that is because of stuff like this. Twitch, YouTube. Early access for content creators is a huge deal because if those people can get in early, then they're going to tell people if they like it, they're going to tell other people to play it. And even if they don't like it necessarily, other people might still get it because they might just disagree with the content. It's a whole adjustment of the landscape of reviews, first impressions, all of that potentially.
Origin Access Premier for $100, you get access for the year to basically anything EA produces at the highest level of participation. So DLC, the game itself, so on. I wouldn't be surprised if Ubisoft does the same thing. GOG is already doing that. Gwent and the Gwent full single-player 30-hour RPG, that's going to be only available on GOG. We're going to see a whole lot more competitive efforts in terms of each studio presenting their own separate thing. which will be nice for us as consumers, but it will mean the whole idea of owning a thing, which is still very attractive in time, might get ever more tenuous. Because can you say that you own a game if you just have the disc? Can you considering what updates are now, can you say that you own a game if you only have access to it through your subscription service? Does owning a game even matter in the modern landscape to the people playing them? It's gonna get weird, folks.
That's one that we're gonna have to continue to watch as time develops on it. Now that we've beaten Mr. Ed out of this topic, though, before we go on to the other quick thing, I did want to confirm we do have someone that is a Finnish speaker. The site that was in reference, it is actually a legit site. So the Finnish, they are involved. That said, especially with things unfolding and talking about like businesses and the business aspect of game development and everything else, the sad news this past couple days is that Telltale Games is on its way to shutting its doors. All but a skeleton crew were let go or laid off on Friday morning.
It's about, what, 3/4 of the staff, I believe?
There's only 25 people left. They originally had 250. They were still hiring people. That's the thing. This happened so sudden without any priors that no one was expecting it. There were people who were just moving in the area. There's apparently a person who is flat out basically just screwed. They keep mentioning it in various news articles. And
yeah, he started work Monday, got fired Friday.
Yeah.
Not great work experience, that.
So I want to point something out that I don't know if there's... I haven't seen it in any of the articles, but it's worth noting, is that Q3 ends on Sunday. A week from today is when Q3 ends. Something happened in that report going out into the end of Q3 that could have easily been the reason for this huge 180 from what Telltale was doing. Given where is it Pete how do you say his last name? Holloway, was it?
Holloway.
Yeah. Given that he came in last year and he came from Zynga, like you could tell that there were some changes being made that Telltale wanted to try to make more money that they weren't making with their founders. But yeah, it's a skeleton crew left. It's a crew that's working on a was it a
There's a Minecraft Netflix thing.
Yes. Yep, that's it.
They keep dancing around the issue of whether or not they're going to finish the Telltale final season for The Walking Dead, because supposedly there are assets for episodes 3 and 4, but neither is finished. So it's a big question of whether or not they're going to do that, or if they're just going to try to rework episode 2 into a finale. We'll find out very soon. But there's another thing that needs to be brought up, and it's something that I've seen come up in Twitter conversations, and I believe it did come up also in an article or else. I believe it was Mike Futter's feed where I heard it from, so fairly trustworthy. Almost nothing Telltale put out was apparently almost nothing. Like Batman, no. The Wolf Among Us, no. I think Minecraft was okay. I think Game of Thrones was actually okay, which is ironic because that was one of their worst ones.
Mm-hmm.
Guardians of the Galaxy, nothing. Like most of these licenses, while they sold great, they got tons of critical reception, they weren't making a profit off of it. They were actually at a loss for most of it. So they've effectively been bleeding themselves out by not having any real original IPs. Because they used to have original IPs back in the day. Like they had Puzzle Agent, and I believe they partnered with someone for Hector, Badge of Carnage, and stuff like that. And they just gave up on that. They just kept trying to do this one specific thing, and it's...
Do you suppose it has something to do with the royalties that they are paying out to...
Oh, no question. I've been... there's a Netflix series right now about Toys That Made Us that's been talking about various things, and one of the heaviest things you learn about when you're working with a licensed property is that, yeah, the royalties can kill you. It's what screwed over Kenner with the Star Wars toys when George Lucas got to read the deal and stuff like that. Getting a good royalty rate is apparently insanely hard. You need to basically just have the best shark on your side, and I do not expect that. Telltale, especially at the beginning, had that.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like they just kept hoping that one of these games is going to do really well. And note how, like I said, I think Minecraft did do it for them, because think about how quickly there was a season 2 for that. Whereas think about how long we waited to hear about if The Wolf Among Us would have a second season. And even then, it was still very tenuous, very nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And how quickly they jumped into bed with Netflix because, okay, we can do this. Maybe this will make us money because then we're in that subscription model. And our games fit that for the most part.
Yeah, they
So,
do.
Well, actually, that Netflix deal was supposed to happen years ago, but
Really?
it didn't because
Wow.
the people at the top in studio management. Yeah, because if you read these articles about Telltale management essentially mismanaging things,
there was a really
have been
bad.
coming out for basically the past year or so as part of the publicity campaign to say, hey, that was what was happening. Now we're turning it around. But that Netflix deal, for example, that was like the lifeboat that people were really excited because it was going to be a Stranger Things license and etc. That was supposed to happen that could have happened right when Stranger Things came out. But the people at the top of the company thought that Stranger Things was just a show about kids with bikes. There was an absurd level of a blindness from, again, the top layer that trickled down and meant that these incredibly talented creators, I knew a lot of folks at Telltale, it turns out, all of those folks doing their best on these licenses now being able to apply their full efforts in recent months as they tried to turn the company around, putting in absurd levels of overtime to make that happen. Yeah, they got fired. People at the top are gonna be able to pay off whoever they need to be able to pay off. Probably going to move on to cushy jobs next because they're the people who made Telltale, right?
Right. Well, except the CEO of Telltale came in from Zynga, but in Pete's case, I want to know what his golden parachute looks like. I'm incredibly curious to know what its golden parachute looks like.
I mean, they made Telltale, but they broke Telltale too. How do they tell that story?
In
On
5
an executive
episodes.
level, people tend to have very short memories or be like, we're gonna hire you. You did a thing once.
Yeah. Right.
It's not logical.
You're you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You're asking how they would tell the story. 5 episodes.
I do want to say that there is one thing is it's amazing just how many studios have been opening up arms to Telltale. Everybody recognizes just how talented these people are. There's been trending hashtags about this, trying to get anybody a job somewhere. It's been amazing to see that happen live. That at the very least, other parts of the game industry show that they had a heart.
Yeah.
And if, in terms of you as a fan, just like feeling crushed because your favorite developer is gone, I do want to mention that very likely a number of Telltale employees are going to be landing at the other studios that have been coming out, because even Skybound, who helped launch the whole Telltale thing with The Walking Dead, they've started their own. They're actually doing a Thief of Thieves game right now. It's on Steam for wishlisting. I don't think it's actually out yet. So like, this style of game isn't going to go away, but Telltale needs to be a lesson in what not to do as much as in what to do, because they did a lot of pioneering things for advancing adventure games into a popular medium. There are people who have been playing it on their phones, which is the thing we keep hearing about. All sorts of games we're going to be doing, but Telltale actually did it. They were platform agnostic. They were one of the last AAA publisher developers on the PlayStation Vita, and it just worked for them. So, like, there's a lot going on here. It's a bloody tragedy. But also,
because of the working conditions of game, the sad truth that we aren't talking about yet is all these people currently opening their arms, they could very well end up shuttering or being another crunch-heavy workplace next. Not unfeasible at all. If anything, it's the norm rather than
Yeah. Well, with game development and deadlines and whatnot, I wish more people realized that the whole process was a time sensitive crunch type work environment that gets spread around between the different studios. The other thing I want to just say that it is nice seeing people talk about trying to get these developers jobs, because despite how someone may feel about a studio necessarily or the type of games that they're putting out, I think the idea of people losing their jobs because of mismanagement is always a horrible story. And hopefully those 225 displaced people find new places of work and a home, and hopefully it doesn't impact them too severely. That said, I suppose that works going into actual topics that we had prepared for the evening. Talking about...
Wait, we haven't touched a single
no
single item on the agenda.
No.
This invisible agenda, by the way, and I promise you it does exist, and we're breaking the rules, but there are rules. We have not touched any of them yet.
Yep.
So you're welcome, guys. This is going to be the XL edition of the Newbcast.
We're gonna hit 3 hours, guys. Oh my gosh. Oh dear. No. So I suppose talking about business practices and games and whatnot, Nintendo made a change to their business practice too, looking at their online service. So
yeah.
for those that don't know, at the most recent Nintendo Direct, it was announced that there was going to be an online service. It was going to be $20 a year. It would give you access to retro games. It would have cloud saving options, etc. Nintendo is the last of the 3 console creators to go to a subscription model for their online services. But we have thoughts, because there are positive things to this new service. There are not so positive things to the service. Where would people like to start on this little gem?
Well, I mean, think about online play and what people are going on for play on consoles right now. If you've got an Xbox or a PlayStation, you have so many different games you purposely play online. What does the Switch really have to entice people to play multiplayer and pay multiplayer on its own?
Splatoon and Minecraft, Splatoon and Minecraft, Splatoon and Minecraft. And here's the really, I mean, it's like a nice thing, but it's a really confusing thing, is that Fortnite, Warframe, all these free-to-play things, they're handling it like PlayStation, where you don't actually need a subscription to have it, which is, honestly, as much as it's a nice move, it's going to hurt them, because Fortnite is one of the big pulls for Switch.
Mm-hmm.
They just released a Fortnite bundle.
Yeah. So you got that. Mario Kart was another fun one to play online a lot. I think the idea of moving that online was a big move for them. I thought it was great to actually play that and actually have people to play again and not try to fit everyone on the couch.
Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Yep.
That's still not out yet, though, and
no, it's not.
And they're going to be leaning into local play still. I mean, think about on Wii U, they had 8 players at once, and while there's no guarantee they're going to do that again, it's Nintendo. They like to do local stuff. They even have a thing now. There's going to be games that are for when you put 2 Switches together.
Yeah.
Mario Party.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep. Mario Party's a great example too. Yep. So, I guess
at the moment, it's not very strong, and it'll be decent-ish after the holidays.
I think having access to the digital games too, because there's supposed to be a retro library available where you can play games and such. I think that is a great concept, and the pricing for this service is by far and away cheaper than any of the other services out there. Like what was it? You can get $35 a year for 4 units.
8, up to 8 units.
Is it 8? Okay.
By the way, you're part of my family, aren't you? Right, Mish? We're family now. We're definitely family now.
Right, exactly. So, and I think you just witnessed there a great way to even cut your costs even more. But yeah, no, that I think it's incredibly affordable. One of the things that really stuck out to me about the online service that I was just like, I don't know if that's such a great idea, is the cloud saving service. So, with the cloud saving service, it will store as data online in the cloud as long as there's an active active account. Once the account becomes inactive, there is no more data. Nothing, zilch, zero.
Wait, so if your account lapses, everything you had stored in the oh, whoa!
It's like a hostage. Sony would at least give you a year before they would delete it. Nintendo's like, no.
I thought Sony was 6 months, but regardless, I mean, that's still a lot of time to download the stuff. And Sony at least lets you store data onto like a USB device that you can store locally. The Switch doesn't let you do that. And as far as Microsoft is concerned, Microsoft will store stuff on the cloud for you free anyways. You don't have to pay for the premium online service to get the cloud storage. So, despite Nintendo's like attempt to modernize along with the rest of the platforms, they kind of stumbled in the door again. They're notorious for it. They're great at doing that, and I think that was the big.
At least they know that they need to put a low price point on it.
Yeah,
I'll give them that. Like, they're the last ones in. One of the biggest advantages for people on Nintendo is that if you were playing something, like if you played original Splatoon on the Wii U, you never had to worry about this.
yeah.
And that got a lot of people interested in playing and converting over to the Switch for Splatoon 2. So, I mean, I think they recognize what's going on, and I think the way that they're kind of bridging the gap, like newer audiences are going to be the ones that are playing Splatoon 2 and doing the multiplayer. I think you're going to have a lot of people who enjoy the original classic stuff that are going to want to get in. So I think everybody kind of has a piece of interest in what the online offering is. But yeah, it's kind of half-baked.
The classics is actually something that is what irks me the most, honestly, is that it's only SNES and NES when just...
Wait, isn't it only NES for now?
I think there's I could have sworn there was supposed to be some SNES.
I thought SNES is something that's being worked on. I thought NES was what's going to be there to start off with.
Oh,
so it's rolling.
They didn't even announce SNES stuff.
Yeah.
They also haven't said whether or not titles will disappear from the library over time. So
This
we don't
is
know
true.
if there will be a Netflix
Or
like
there will be new platforms added, because goodness me, we still have not seen Virtual Console stuff for the GameCube. It's been how long? And so far, the only way you can get a classic...
You will not get that at all.
Or the Wii is with that one NVIDIA tablet thing in China. That's the one place where you can actually get Virtual Console versions of these things that they should just be on the Switch. I mean, I'm not saying I need it day one, but I'm saying this should be in the... You already have these emulators built, and the Switch is supposedly very easy to program to. Most of the recent Nintendo hardware has been trying to be more accessible, so I would hope that, because the homebrew scene's beating them to it, that they're trying to get it so you can play PSP games on there. I would like to think that Nintendo can get a Nintendo 64 on there.
The thing is, they're too busy releasing Luigi's Mansion on 3DS at the moment, so you have to wait a little bit longer.
Priorities, Elijah. Clearly, Nintendo's got priorities. Yeah, you know, I kind of wish they would have thought through their saving service. I think that was their big blunder on this whole thing. They could have done that so much better. It's given any type of option, like if you discontinue your service, you have X amount of time to download your stuff. If you download your stuff, here's a way for you to export it out to an SD card, a USB drive, a flash stick, whatever. They didn't do that. I think that the cloud services limiting which games actually store cloud information is also kind of a blunder. The fact that there is no cloud storage or cloud saving for Splatoon 2 is kind of a big deal. And their excuse was they're trying to prevent cheating. And it's like, their current system doesn't prevent cheating. There's a point where the top four or five leaders on the Splatoon boards was, please fix your whatever it was. It was basically saying,
please add anti-cheat.
Yes,
think.
That's it. But that happened. And they're not acknowledging the true problem. They're just given the option for cloud storage is not going to change it. Like if they're worried about the cheating system, all they had to do was add a validation to the information that they had stored. It's not that hard. A lot of other online games that are of similar genres know how to do it.
This is Nintendo. They always are going to do half measures with this stuff. I mean, with the Wii U, the last update they ever gave to the firmware was just to try to stop homebrew. Like, seriously, the only thing is they patched the browser a little bit so that it would be harder to do it. Now you have to get a virtual console game, a specific one, then you install something down there, and then you can still do it. That was all they just tried to put up one last stop gate to stop people from doing whatever they want with the console, and then after that it was just like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty well established that Nintendo doesn't know how to internets. I think this kind of further supports that thought.
Which is confusing. I mean, it's...
Oh, well, after you.
Sure. I will just leave it at that. Isn't the reason why we've gone to Nintendo to begin with. So at least the things that they are strong at, they continue to be strong at. We know that this is going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge for them to figure out their place in the online segment, period. And this is the first foray. This is the first iteration.
What I haven't understood is why Nintendo is recognized as the company that's not good with new technology or with the internet, because so many of their efforts have principally been focused on that. Connectivity. We were connecting Game Boys to the GameCube. The streaming service, back in the day, you could stream Zelda or certain CDI titles to your console. Nintendo was a pioneer of those things. In Japan, you can stream Resident Evil 7 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey to your Switch. It just doesn't come west. Mm-hmm. In so many regards, Nintendo is not as frustrating as a company, not because they can't do things or because they're bad at it. They're clearly very good at things they dedicate energy to. It's because they can very knowingly choose to not dedicate efforts to other areas that they're selling to you because they know you'll pay for it. Because they're Nintendo. Yeah. To a degree that no other company can really strong arm its audience. And the fact that its audience in many ways even supports that strong arming is a indicator of how much clout Nintendo has in this industry to this day.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Is there anything else we want to get on this topic? No?
Yeah,
I think Luigi's Mansion 3.
Oh, jeez.
That one is, that's the thing. They're releasing the one to 3DS, the other one's coming to Switch.
And number 2 came to 3DS as well. And I think number 1, I asked someone this question actually. In the GameStop, they told me, yeah, the original game that they're bringing to 3DS still has mandatory inverted controls. You cannot change it to anything else. So if you have a problem with inverted controls, you might as well just sequel, which is already available on the console as well, and is $20 instead of $40. Oh, because it's in the Greatest Hits collection. Nintendo
Sure.
does some really weird stuff.
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they do. If that's everything on this topic, I think, seeing as to how long we've been going, that this would be a fantastic point to take a break. We've been at it for an hour and a half, and we have not taken a break yet. So I would like to take this opportunity to go ahead and tell everyone to go ahead and use the restroom, grab a drink, grab a snack, whatever you got to do. The Newbcast won't go too far, though. We'll be back in just a short bit. See you on the flip side. That was such an exasperated sigh.
On the dot. I got on the dot.
Well done. Welcome back to the Newbcast Podcast for the second half of the show. Whew. So, yeah, we're keeping great pace. Hour and a half in, one topic down.
I mean, in fairness, there were a lot of other topics that came in, and they needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
Surprise topics.
Extra credit topics.
Extra credit. Yes, there we go. I like
you
that.
know how it is with extra credit. You need to make sure you do all of your extra credit, whether or not you've actually earned the points for anything else.
So, talking about topics, we had a guest topic for this evening that I thought looked rather interesting. The Unbridging Games translating AAAs to mobiles. How do we want to kick this off, gentlemen?
I think Elijah looks kind of offended by talking about abridging games in the first place. So.
I said nothing. I do think that the man who raised the topic in Discord, though, should be the one to introduce it.
All right, I guess I can do that. So, Final Fantasy 15 Mobile Edition, or as it's being called, Pocket Edition, and now Pocket Edition HD, just hit Xbox 360. Or I'm sorry, I am stuck in the 7th gen. Xbox One, PS4, and the Nintendo Switch. And what's exceptional about the Pocket Edition of Final Fantasy 15 is that it did come to consoles in the first place. We don't usually see, sometimes we'll see portable games come over to platforms. We saw that happen with Assassin's Creed Liberation from the PS Vita over to the PS3. It has an HD edition, but we don't really see mobile games in particular make their way from mobile to AAA, particularly when they're mobile adaptations of an existing work. Why would you play the Pocket Edition when you can play the normal edition? What makes Final Fantasy 15 so exceptional, and the bright future I see in others potentially take this route, is that Final Fantasy 15 is a complete translation of the original. And what I mean by that is that it takes all of the big ticket elements of Final Fantasy 15, the driving in the world with your best bros, collecting ingredients, fighting monsters, doing side quests, engaging with this road trip narrative that spans across time and literally space. It takes all of that, this now 300 plus hour potential epic, and it condenses that into a 20-30 hour experience that you can play on your phone or now on PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Now, the thing is, we talked about this a little bit earlier. There's a couple of major issues with games in terms of how people enjoy a work. The first is that, unlike a TV show, unlike Alone in the Dark 2008, the shining star of the video game industry that no one paid attention to, you can't fast forward to your section of choice. The second major thing you're dealing with is that you're making these humongous games that, due to the presence of all these other humongous, seeing 100+ hour titles being released like a year later for like $20 on Steam. Price drops are killer. Not only are you seeing that devaluation of a big game, but you're also seeing them just pile up in people's backlogs because most folks don't have time to invest 300 hours in a thing unless it's truly special. Along comes Final Fantasy 15. Okay, what all of the big ticket back of the box features and the story of our game, and brought it to not even brought it to a different platform, just futzed around a little bit, rearranged things, pressed the fast forward button a few times, and made it possible to experience the core of what we tried to communicate in a shorter amount of time. I have less time than ever. The thing that most people don't know about game developers is that the more time you spend making games, the less time you have to actually play them. You have to intentionally carve out space in your life for games, if you can bear to, after spending so much time working on them. So the idea of Final Fantasy 15, this game that looks fascinating, that looks beautiful, but there's no way I can put the time into it to genuinely appreciate it, let alone finish it. The idea that now I've got it on this device I can take with me anywhere, or I've got it on my console, and I can experience the same essential thing that my friend who put 250 hours into the base version of the game before they even added more stuff to it. I can get the same experience as him within the condensed space. It's incredibly attractive, and I'd kind of like to poll the group to see not only what did you think of the mobile or pocket edition if you've had any experience of it, but whether or not this is an approach you'd like to see applied to other bigger games. For example, would you like to see the Assassin's Creed Odyssey pocket edition that has a more stylized structure that tells the same essential story, but just happens to be 70 hours less?
I did play Pocket Edition. I actually did play it back at launch for work, and I think it's fine. I think that it's the most recent example since Dead Space Mobile that, hey, yeah, you can actually make these AAA experiences work on the mobile platform. You just have to actually respect the platform, because that's the issue. Like, they tried to make a Call of Duty game for mobile. It was terrible. Nobody played it because it was this really messy attempt at trying to emulate a console experience. You have to work with your platform strengths, which I think was part of what influenced the Pocket Edition's design and what benefited it, because you don't really want to have huge sprawling hills with Pocket Edition, especially when you're playing on mobile, because you're tapping. It basically plays like a bit more like Diablo, but with all the core mechanics intact. All the stuff that you can still blink and warp and all of that, that's all there, and all the cutscenes are even there, down to the voice acting. It's impressive, and I'm okay with this, honestly. I'm very okay with versions of games that are easier for people to play and that are on more platforms, because a lot of this is a point that actually one of the Andrew from the Switch Focus podcast made, which was that a lot of the games of 8th gen, basically 7th gen games with better graphics, bigger scale. Sorry, hold on.
Clearly, you're getting all choked up over this issue.
The cookies are revenge. The cookies are revenge. But it's a problem where a lot of these games have just become bloated. That was what we were touching upon before, is that it's a lot easier to make a game bigger than it is to make it deeper. Well, it's also a lot easier to trim a game down and make it more focused. I mean, we're seeing this kind of happen across the industry in general, like with stuff like Hellblade and Echo. But in the mobile scene, there's a ton of untapped audiences who would go for these sorts of experiences. And the beautiful thing is, Pocket Edition also kind of plays like a classic Final Fantasy game because of the perspective, because of the graphics and everything. It actually appeals to certain players in the fandom more so than the somewhat divisive original release of it. So there's a lot of potential here. I could see it being really awesome, but above all else, it comes down to respect of the platform and respect of what consumers are going to put up with.
And I'd like to emphasize that this doesn't have to be platform agnostic. A pocket specific translation. The fact that this has come to other platforms, and that, at least from the years I've seen in the chart toppings, it seems to be doing quite well. I think, this is another thing I'd like to pull the group on, as far as, would you buy, if you had a choice, the 30-hour of the new big blockbuster 100-hour game, given the choice, regardless of platform? Is this just a thing that we can potentially see as a part of the gaming landscape going forward? We talked earlier about the two versions of a game, one that comes out earlier, one that comes out later. What about the version of the game that happens to be shorter? but has the same core ingredients.
That's tough. I mean, I totally understand a developer trying to respect the time of their players, especially as players get older. The one thing that we have less and less of is time, right? And trying to give some of that back so that you may actually enjoy the content or whatnot. I can totally appreciate that, but I would really wonder how well that would work having an abridged game. And I'm sorry, Elijah, that's what I'm going to call it. Like, these are abridged versions of the game.
Really, for me, it comes down to execution more than anything else. Like, with the choice, I could get Pocket Edition, but I have the Windows Edition, and I'm going to play that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I might not finish it. I might finish it. I don't know. But I think the option of a shorter one, and I think the option of one where the controls are more accessible above all else, is something that really hits me. That's the thing I think is most valuable about Pocket Edition, is that there are just so many people who will be able to play it now and experience it that wouldn't otherwise, because the main console release is a bit intense to first get into. There's like a whole gauntlet of tutorials you have to complete. So that makes me want there to be versions of this. Personally speaking, I kind of still prefer to experience it the way the original developers intended.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when, going back to Dead Space Mobile real quick, there are actually things that I like about that game more than what they did in the original Dead Space. They actually made some creative decisions that were better. Like, the way they handled weapons firing and everything like that, they made it a lot more substantive. There was a lot more variability to how you handle things. And also, ironically, the touchscreen input was way better for shooting. It was so much easier to actually fire and take out enemies and stuff like that. Aside from the Ripper, it worked way better. So there are things that were superior in that version, but also they came with their own cons. It's not something you can easily generalize. It's a very case-by-case basis, I would say.
Sure.
And it is worth noting that the Pocket Edition Final Fantasy 15 is by the same developers. They didn't port it off to a different studio. It's still in-house, which makes it all the more exceptional that this exists.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my experience on it, I've been aware of Pocket Edition for a while. I bought Final Fantasy 15 at launch and very much enjoyed it to begin with. I kind of got, and I know that this is a strange emotional response, upset that there is this version where I could go and play it for 30 hours. And my immediate thought was, gosh, is there going to be material? Is there going to be stuff in here that I should know as somebody who enjoys the game and enjoys what's happening that I didn't get as part of my original content? And I realize that that's most likely not the case, and the purpose isn't that. For me, I think there's a rubric on it, and there are very few situations where a Pocket Edition like this would appeal to me. The first thought is, one, did I buy the original? If I'm already going to spend all of the time with the extended material, I'm never even going to consider this. I'm not going to take that time at all. Do I still want to check it out at the time that this Pocket Edition content is released? You know, we're looking 2 years down the road now, about. And if I wasn't aware of everything with Final Fantasy 15, yeah, I probably would want to be there at this point, but there are very few games where I can say 2 years down the road that I still have that appeal and interest, but I haven't already purchased the original. And then, is it going to be story complete? If I do feel like it's going to be story complete, and it sounds like by and large these situations are, at that point, if all of those kind of marks are checked for me, I would very strongly consider a purchase. But if any of those aren't in line, it's either going to be, hey, I've already got something that's got more of what I want than what this is going to give me. I don't see the benefit of doing it in a portable sense. Or I'll feel guilty because I bought this game at release at $60 and got extra content on it for another $30 and haven't played it. Why am I going to spend another $20 to and just waste the 90 that I've already spent. I think there are a lot of situations where I would say no to it. There are very few situations where it would make sense for me, but I can see the appeal to others.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely see the appeal to some people, and having that shorter version and be able to experience the story. I feel like in pocket editions of games that have already come out, that there are elements of the game that are missing that might actually ruin the experience. What immediately comes to mind is Minecraft Pocket Edition. So in Minecraft, we all know the whole survival aspect, the whole crafting aspect, and building aspect. And of course, the most popular thing was the crafting and building portion. But in the Pocket Edition, even the crafting portion of the gameplay was missing. It was just building. They had pre-made blocks of different materials that you could make stuff from and just build. And of course, you were limited on what you could make from that as well. And I feel like that actually hindered a game that could do very well on Pocket Edition. Like, if Minecraft Pocket Edition was crafting and building, that probably would have sold a lot better and done a lot better overall. But there was an aspect of it missing. I feel like that is a risk that other games could run looking at this shorter version. Again, not to say there isn't an appeal to it, because there's certainly an appeal, but that's my biggest concern immediately looking at this idea.
Yeah, the core mechanics aren't going to be the same.
Things you already care about is sort of the big concerns associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would assuage those concerns, given a theoretical... Oh, what's a big ticket game that's coming out soon? Red Dead Redemption 2. GTA 5 lasted 78 freaking hours for no good reason. Let's say you were presented with a magic box that said, hey, you can play Red Dead Redemption 2, and it will be a 10-hour game, gameplay complete, story complete, instead of a 78-hour game. What would convince you that that was the case, knowing that there were people who were playing the full version? I think that's one of the core issues here as well. The fact that there is a version also available that is bigger, and therefore creates some of that fear of missing out.
Sure. And maybe... Oh, go ahead, Elijah. Go ahead.
It's just, I'm thinking the thing is that actually highlights one of the biggest problems, is that Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't so much selling itself on its shooting as much as it is on its world. Like, there was an example, the guy behind NoClip, Danny Dwyer, he was playing a demo, and there was someone walking around in the bush, and you can now actually give general prompts to have the protagonist give certain audio, and he was just sort of like, hey, what was going on there? And a grumpy guy hunting. And, there was the option to be violent, but he didn't. He just was passive about it, and the guy was like, okay. The guy gets his kill, and then he's all happy, and you could still interact with him after that. None of that was scripted. None of that was, obviously, AI scripting some of that, but I'm talking in terms of a linear event, none of that was guaranteed. And that's the sort of experience where it would be a lot harder for these pocket editions to capture certain things, which is why, once again, it feels very case by case, because we're basically, once again, we're looking at the early 2000s coming back, because in the early 2000s, we had cross-gen games. You're talking to the guy who has played every single version of Force Unleashed, and my gosh, there's basically 4 different games with that name that are fundamentally different, handled by completely different teams, different story aspects and everything, because they were trying to offer it to as many people as possible. And in a way, we're kind of seeing that happen again. So I could see it working for a number of games, but there's going to be some where it will probably feel like just a different game entirely, or a lesser version. Final Fantasy 15, it works pretty well because it still uses a lot of traditional JRPG tropes. But there's going to be some stuff where you will have a harder time convincing people that you should actually invest in the smaller one, even if it is shorter.
I think, okay, so that said, like, I think one of the things that we are circling around on is, like, the parts that are missing and whatnot, and maybe with the pocket edition, if the whole story's there and people have that option, but some of the elements of the gameplay aren't there, so long as they get their story, because I mean, most games, there's a story to it, there's a narrative to it. It would be a shame if that was missed out on. My gripe, going back to the Minecraft example, maybe that's a reason why I want a full version versus an abridged version. I still get one of the big things, the theme to that narrative of I had to build something to survive, but I didn't get, I don't know.
How much can you play around with a mechanic before it becomes completely broken? Like, at that point, not being able to have an entire mode of play is a big issue. So, like, if Final Fantasy 15 were to be like, oh, we're going to have no combat in this game, but we're going to have all the story, I would, even in the situation where all of my boxes were ticked, would be like, I'm not really feeling this. This is something that I expect in this game. It's going to be there. And modifying that for a mobile platform or for whatever platform it's on makes sense. If you can keep some of the key elements that are unique to that series, even more bonus. But I think as long as it's close enough, I'm okay.
Well, I think one of the things about an RPG is like there's a grind element to it, right? And even like regular mob battles wouldn't have to occur to try to cut down on time. If there's a story there in just boss battles, even for a pocket edition, I mean, you still get the major conflicts that the group would face. You still get the story, and maybe that's a solution that people would be interested in. Now, myself, like, I've got a long, big history with Final Fantasy, so my own personal take, my personal feeling, I'd want the whole game. You know, I've been playing Final Fantasy for 27 years. And I just want that in my game at that point. But I can see where people want the narrative, especially like a Final Fantasy story. Those are rich stories, and people are getting the game just so that they can play some Final Fantasy, get the story of Final Fantasy. Maybe it's a market. Maybe they'll grab those few extra people. Like, I don't have 120 hours to sacrifice to this title, but I've got 10 hours.
Yeah, I think it will be a real interesting space to explore if it continues. Square Enix has been kind of innovating in this regard because they even had the mobile titles for Hitman Go. They had Deus Ex Go. They had Tomb Raider Go. They had all options already of different experiences into a mobile format and a different genre entirely in some cases. So it will be really interesting to see how developers continue to push that envelope. But the crucial bit is, I really hope they continue to push it, because the idea that down the road it will be accepted for there to be 3 or 4 different versions of a game, perhaps with 4 different prices on them, for people in different areas of life, with different consoles that they own or may not own, different requirements, with even accessibility issues, to be able to still experience these fundamental titles. And also ask the questions, how many mechanics or individual mini games can this game or this game? How much can you take away from a title where it is no longer telling the same story or delivering the same experience? We'll be in much better place as an industry, I think, if we ask those questions. And we'll only be able to ask those questions if those games sell. So I got Pocket Edition on loan, off on Switch day one. I was like, whoa, and I'll be interested to see where the industry goes from here.
Yeah,
because I want to see that happen.
Yeah, I would be curious to see where it goes too. And maybe with some titles, it's something to have. And I think it's one thing I want to point out too, because I think we're really focusing on Pocket Edition being like a mobile edition, and it doesn't need to be a mobile edition. A Pocket Edition usually is a shortened version, not a mobile version. So it could have all the high fidelity, high fancy graphics and everything
Oh,
else.
I'll be fine with that.
Yeah, it's just that the game itself has been shortened. So I just want to add that little tidbit because I think that might have been part of the conversation that may have been overlooked by some folks, and I just want to make sure that they got that part too. Because a gripe with about mobile games in general. If we want to gripe about mobile games and how well those work, and when they port back and forth, we can just talk about Chrono Trigger for Steam.
I would like to offer just one last thing is also spin-offs are not a bad thing either for when you're trying to reach other audiences.
Yes.
This is something that we kind of bounced away from, and I still don't understand why, because that was one of the best things about the Wii is that it got exclusive games that were built uniquely for it that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do stuff like that with your intellectual properties. You're not bound to have to make they made Final Fantasy Pocket Edition, but they also could have hypothetically just done a side story thing, and it could have been just as good, potentially. Sometimes it's easier if it's not bound to the exact same lore.
And maybe this is an option too. I mean, Crisis Core was a great game on the PSP, for example. So,
yeah. You know, if they ever did this with Persona, they could take that game and maybe make it the length of an actual regular RPG.
I know, right?
That's the primary market I'm thinking about. You're already thinking where I am. Like, what if I could play a Persona as a human adult with a responsibility? How great would that be?
And not take a year to play it? Yeah. Oh, I hear you.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Talking about the game development and whatnot as well, what about the idea of having like very heavy themes in games and grappling with that? I'm guessing this is your topic, Elijah.
Well, it was something that I wanted to bring up because, mentioning Nelson's games for Ryugu Bear Dad at the very beginning, that game I was one of the beta testers for, and I actually was one of the testers for one of the heavier scenes. And what's stuck with me since we did that scene, and I'm not going to spoil it, it's a free-to-play game. Look it up. It's really funny, too. And it will hit you in your feels. And I don't just say that because I beta tested it. But one of the things that stuck with me is that we're finally reaching a point where games can, while still being engaging, they don't have to necessarily be fun about the engagement. It's actually something that we're kind of grappling with right now, because like with The Last of Us 2, they're showing off this really brutal, they're trying to make it be unpleasant in some respects, but it still plays liquid smooth. And there are other games that are kind of going the opposite direction, like Mafia 3. There's the systemic racism actually is systemic in that. The response in different regions changes. Being in a white community makes the game harder, and that's wow. That was just like something that you don't normally see. And there are even games that just don't really try to go for funsies as much as they do selling a specific narrative. There was the Telltale stuff. There was Lost Planet 3. There was every Mafia game before Mafia 3. It's starting to become a thing where games can be more mature. I mean, even in terms of Until Dawn. Until Dawn, it's engaging, it's interesting, but it's not really done as something that you do catharsis with like what you would do. Mm-hmm. It's this whole other breed of approaching some themes in a way that feels more adult. Vampire in so many ways, and I won't go into a huge rant about it. I've already done it on this podcast. But it handled a lot of themes in a very way. So,
yeah. And we've talked about it on the podcast before too. I mean, I think my example was Papers, Please. How it was incredibly engaging. Like, it wasn't fun. Well, I mean, it had a couple moments, but overall, like, it was just engaging in the struggle. Yeah, Georgie was the comic relief, but it was such an engaging and commentary on what was actually being discussed in that game, So, I guess this kind of circles back on the whole idea. Does a game have to be ha-ha fun versus engaging and thought-provoking and other feels that could still be entertaining?
Which is what I wanted to raise once we have an actual developer with us.
Yeah,
So-
this is actually something I'm going to be interviewing some developers about for PC Gamer up here soon. So it's definitely something that's happening, and it's a intriguing field to study because many games are still rated on the idea of haha fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the principal measures of growth and maturity in an artistic medium, whether you're looking at film, comics, or literature, is the moments where it crosses over from depicting things pure pleasure or joy to be able to depict other elements of the human emotional spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with games where it gets thorny is the idea that this isn't. I'd argue that other artistic mediums are still interactive in other ways, but
Mm-hmm.
the idea of participation, for example, in horrific acts of complicity, suddenly becomes a very tangible issue in a way that it isn't in many other mediums. Now, I'm going to spoil a physical game that's only playable in installations at certain times, been around years and years. Real quick, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Spoiler alert! It's up. We know.
There's a game called Train by let me make sure I have the right name. So Brenda Romero, originally Brenda Brathwaite, she made this game called Train. And it's a physical game about building the most efficient train network you can. And it's very fun and it's very engaging, and it is presenting unique sort of context and physical art style. Now, the thing about it is the setting for this engaging, fun train game is a little bit bleak, and you might begin to wonder why. At the end of the game, near the end, you realize that the train you've been building is the trains to route Jewish people to Auschwitz.
I knew you were going to say that as soon as you started going down that hesitation and yeah. As soon as you started doing that, it's like, yep, I know where this is going.
So yeah, we've got this game, engaging gameplay, and the gameplay, it very much the entire message of the game, blindly following systems while people stand by and watch, is directly asked by it through its mechanics and also the narrative around it, which is the instant you look at it, horrific. Now, if there was a digital version of Train, the fact that it was released in 2009, it was critically acclaimed, award-winning. We don't have a digital version of that, and I can only imagine the headlines that would rise if there was a digital version. People would be like, this game endorses making trains that go to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Even though that's not the thing it's communicating. And that's the very idea that game. The fact that you're participating in something doesn't mean that you're endorsing it. The fact that you're depicting something doesn't mean that you're endorsing it. The idea that things can be intentionally unpleasant and still compelling and still worthy of playing is a very much an open one. And the fact that it's not being the fact that there's still much resistance to it being asked is a statement on how far we still have to go. As a developer, it's something that I wrestle with regularly. I have private conversations with other developers regularly. It's something very much in our minds. And the number one issue that comes up when we're discussing it is not, can this be done? It's twofold. It's, should it be done? And how will the audience react to it? Because if the audience is going to take this train game and then build a Reddit thread about building the most efficient trains to Auschwitz to get the highest score, then it shouldn't be done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's both a development issue and a culture issue, can we approach unpleasant media in a responsible, self-aware way?
I think you said the key word there. I think you said the key word there, though. A responsible way to do it. Back in June, we had this game. It was a Steam controversy around the SWAT game that was based around like school shootings or mass shootings, right?
Meant for
and serious topic, and it was in no way responsible at all. It was, one would argue, it was even malicious, right? And I think games like that actually hurt the idea of a responsible developer looking at a topic and going, all right, how do we discuss this and present this and have people think and engage over this idea? And I think that just makes your overall goal, like, is it doable? It's probably doable in some way, and it's one that you can't tackle lightly, but your hurdles are getting higher and higher with all these other developers that don't take the time to do it responsibly.
Did you see the Steam controversy about the game that?
Did he cut out for everyone else?
He cut out, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So, did y'all see the game that was trying to teach?
You keep cutting out whenever you try to say the name. I don't think the podcast wants you to say it.
I think so.
Somebody is listening into our conversation.
Okay.
Let's try this again.
There is a game. The controversy was Slave Tetris. It was trying to teach people about the 1700s and the triangle.
I remember this.
And there was a controversy because one of the things they wanted, how awful was it that human beings were treated as commodities and were stuffed together like Tetris, and that it made an actual game of Tetris. That's one of the cases that I'd consider kind of borderline, like, man, what do you do there? Because on one hand, the sentiment is appropriate, and the gameplay is somewhat in line with the message, but also slave Tetris.
I think the problem is that it's too much of a game to begin with. There's a clear definition as to what's going on. There's a clear point system. There's a clear score and an objective that comes from that. Papers, Please avoids that because really the only numbers that you talk about with Papers, Please are like rent, and that's immediately attributed to something that is sensible, something that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that we don't attribute as like a score, because that's not really the result at the end of the game either. I think anything where there's an element of scoring or an expectation of scoring is already dehumanizing. So you start putting a human element into that, and it's going to be discomforting in a way that that can cause some of the problems that we're afraid of seeing in posts and forums.
And the questions that developers are coming up with, goes right back to the Last of Us 2 point that Elijah raised earlier, was what about when it's supposed to be dehumanizing? What about when it's supposed to be uncomfortable? We do have films and comics and movies and all these other different things that can embody those things. Is our games able to do that? We have titles like Hotline Miami that was one of my big stands, as it were. Hotline Miami 2, and its very controversial ending, what it kind of communicates was something that I wrote a retrospective of for PC Gamer. Hotline Miami, it's a game. It plays super buttery smooth and has a very compelling game loop. It's very aggressive, and yet it's utterly disgusting, disturbing stuff. Can we make those kinds of games? Should we? Again, keyword being responsible. I think that we can and should, but so much of us doing it responsibly depends on how our audience reacts to it. Because if we show this awful scene of human cruelty in The Last of Us Part 2, and people cheer their fucking arms off because this is the coolest, best looking PS4 exclusive game ever, then there's clearly a mismatch in terms of artistic intent and what the audience can and will accept.
Yeah. Well, who decides what's unacceptable, and how do they decide that it's unacceptable is the other challenge.
Yeah.
Because
And the answer is, of course, the Newbcast.
Oh, naturally.
Of course. No.
But
Yeah.
as a part of the production process, a lot of stuff like we're weeding out at that level because we know that that's something that we can 100% control, right? Is that we're just deciding to be very cautious about these things in the first place. But once you get past that gate, yeah, there's no single element where like we find out, hey, this doesn't work out. Can you take it off of all of these platforms? Or, like, I don't know. Like the message comes across the wrong way. All you need to do is have one message come across the wrong way, and what everybody who is involved in that team is doing is now the opposite of what they wanted.
So, I guess the big thing is like, should games be allowed to do this? Absolutely, games should be able to do it. It's a medium, right? Books can do it, movies can do it. I think the obstacle that is faced in the gaming industry is there's this false preconception that kids are the major demographic of games. And we all know that's bullshit. We know that most gamers are adults. We know that most gamers are older millennials. Right? We know that. We know that from the demographics and the surveys that are done. But there's still this false preconceived notion that it's still kids that play games. Video games. And so topics like these sensitive topics, can't be tackled. And that's... I think part of that responsibility then also is bucking that stereotype, because it's not true anymore, and it hasn't been true for some of us for quite a long time.
And if you want to talk about media that kids see before a time, how many times seen a movie or listened to a piece of music or read a comic or read a book that they really shouldn't have at their age?
Sure.
I read, I think it was, who did it? I think it was Updike. Okay, Upton Sinclair. I read Upton because I was supposed to read a short thing for the library. I was trying to rush through books for the library reading competition, and I thought Upton's Jungle would be about the jungle. But no, it was actually about the abuses of the Chicago meatpacking in the 1900s. And it was an awful psychic experience. I'm a better human for having gone through that. But also, if that was a game, people would be in an uproar saying,
interactivity does something about it. It makes it a bit more real.
Yeah, you can't depict the exploitation of immigrants 1920 Chicago. That isn't right.
Well, and to your point, right? You're talking about like having read something or seen something or heard something when we're younger. All those, with the exception of books, there's a rating system, and ESRB or PEGI exist for that very same reason in gaming. So maybe
the thing is, most developers are really, I'm not sure if y'all have heard of this, but most developers aren't happy with the PEGI and ESRB rating system. The ratings themselves are arbitrary.
Sure.
It says graphic violence, but the graphic violence, like, for example, sexual violence. Sexual violence in GTA versus how sexual looks in a game about the abuses that endure. Again, like an adaptation of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. That's two very different things, but it has the exact same descriptor.
Well, right. And that is a frustration that is certainly understandable, but I'm sure the movie industry feels the same way about GPG, PG-13R. It's the same, like, it's almost too basic of a rating system in, like like at least in the United States with our TV rating system, like there's a huge, like much larger, right? There's a much, and there's letters that accompany the ratings and everything else. Maybe that's something else that has to be looked at, and that also allows for this exploration of topics.
I think
you raised something really good there in terms of being explored there and more specific. Steam is actually on the forefront of that. As much as people give them crap for their hands-off nature to their store, they are the only store that I know has developers input themselves objectionable content that might be in their games with this update. They say if there's going to be explicit content in your game, you're going to describe what it is and what the context for it is, so that people can make informed buying choices.
Good.
And nobody's really talking about that, but that's a huge step forward for our industry if that was a more adopted thing. And I've seen some indies do it in isolation, and every time I see their games, like, I feel great because I get to read that thing and know exactly what.
Yes, absolutely. You get to make an informed purchase then.
Dungeon, I think, is it? It's not Dungeon Quest. It is Dungeon Defenders DX. I'll get y'all the name for it, but Level Up Labs. Let's see, is that the right Level Up Labs? No, that's a business coaching thing.
I just wanted to also really quickly add, one of the other issues with rating systems is that the interpretation changes a lot because, I mean, think back on the Goonies and like Monster Squad and stuff like that, which was rated PG. Sherlock Holmes's younger brother, which involves a woman being fondled visibly as an early plot point, and with Gene Wilder as the younger Sherlock Holmes guy, and that was PG. A lot of what we've defined as suitable content has changed so much that it's sort of like the same issue in terms of copyright law online. It's just so outdated and based around varying terminology that the system in general is kind of creaking along.
Yeah. I think another element is that personal touch. When you're reading a book, you didn't put a single page, you didn't put a single word together on that. You're simply reading what somebody else put in front of you. That sense that you are forced into that chain allows us to be much more comfortable about reading the material inside. The moment that you have a player making a decision that is ethically questionable or making an action that asserts that they are actively interested in doing a thing that is morally reprehensible, especially in a serious setting, like, and let's put this into context. We have so many awful things that we do in games that are totally acceptable that we volunteer ourselves to do, but when we decide that we are going to put it into a serious setting, making an active choice like that suddenly makes it feels like an enablement of that person to do that, whether or not that's the point.
And yeah, the game I was looking for, Defender, I know the guy who made it, pretty cool dude, and on their a rating page, which is separate from their ESRB, PEGI, and GRAC rating, they have game content, and they describe the reading skills that you need to read it. Like if you're seeing like if this is a good thing for your kid, no gore, dismemberment, other extreme violence, brief alcohol references, however, no consumption or no depictions of drunkenness. They get detailed with it, and it's the type of description I'd like to see conducted for more titles outside of what you read on the ESRB site, even if you delve into a detailed description.
And so you have to hunt it down to find it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying?
No, I just great points, great topics. Talking about getting involved in delving into games, then there's a whole other aspect of games that might be interesting to kind of consider and whatnot. That kind of consider this the segue, you will, to like the role play aspect and the storytelling aspect of a game. I think you may have already talked a little bit about this, like trying to have some experience trying to create like different systems or whatnot, or the narrative of a game. Elijah, what
Yes.
you wanna jump in with this in this last?
Okay, so like this is talking about systemically conveying themes for a game. Okay, to go beyond an example of the obvious stuff with Mafia 3, because just like outright, the cops are just incredibly racist to you. People treat you differently based on what district you're in, how you're dressed, whether you're armed or not, all of that. I mean, even the response rate is different. But to actually go to Lost Planet 3, they go out of their way to try to immerse you in the story. I mean, it's not like this hard-boiled, gritty thing. It's actually only teen rated, as I recall, or if it is an M, it's the lightest M you could possibly have. Like some people might swear in it, but it's the most grounded Lost Planet you'll ever see. Because the first one had like zipping around everywhere and all stuff like that. In Lost Planet 3, when you're in your rig, it's in first person, and they made it so you feel every single step, and you can see the protagonist Jim's wife's photo up in the corner, and you can actually change the radio. There's all these little details put in to get you focused on the world and into it. And fighting in the rig, it doesn't feel like this epic shootout. You don't even have guns on your rig. You only have melee stuff. So you're basically a guy making do with his super powerful forklift against these giant monsters that can tear your ass a new one. And the same sort of thing happens when you're on the ground, is that you have these guns and everything. It plays like a cover shooter, but you don't really feel excited so much as you do, crap, I gotta make this work. I hope I have enough ammo to get through this latest acrid hive. There's this, it's not a horror game per se, but it took notes from, it understood that you can be uncomfortable, but also be engaged while being uncomfortable. And it's very consensual about it. It's good in the Evil Within 2 kind of way. It's a very careful balance, and it didn't work for everyone. There are people who call it boring because it feels like you're doing work. There are missions where it is a mandatory thing. You are doing Jim's job. But if you follow it through to the end, you feel like Jim. You understand what he's doing. You completely understand his world, and everything feeds into that. Even the monotony, even the parts that are boring, actually serve a purpose. It's sort of like actually what you see with Persona, where there's all these things that they put together to try to make it. Lost Planet 3 does that. It completely, and the thing is, it was made by a Western developer. A Western developer that's actually not been that well received. It was Spark Unlimited. They made 4 games total in their entire lifetime. This was their last one, and it's just amazing. And they went so far as to ensure that because you're going to be doing a lot of fetch quests and stuff like that, there's tons of ambient dialogue that involves the world. Like, there's a guy in the hallway who's working on something, and he just sort of like, the first time it's like, oh, hello there. And then later, when like the third time through, he's like, I'm not just doing this the whole time. And then later, when when it's supposed to be set several months in, he's like, oh, hey, Jim, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. How are Carol and the kids? And they just like, it feels like the world is alive. For lack of a better way to say it, it's adult storytelling. It's the sort of stuff you would expect from a novel, from a movie, or from a TV series especially, but it's done in a game. And there's a certain subset of people who it really clicked with. I'm one of them. It's amazing to experience because this game isn't trying to overwhelm me with overkill and spectacular and all. No, it's just about you're Jim Payton. You're just trying to make enough money that you can get home to your wife, and everything is going weird. There's some conspiracy going on, and you're trying to make sense of it. That's one of the best examples I can think of. Another one would be actually Mafia 2, because everybody complains about Mafia 2 having an open world but not really using it. But the thing is, the sandbox is there basically as a background. They actually turned the sandbox into a mechanic instead of the point. The story is the point. Again, a lot of these games that are aiming for a more mature audience in an actual mature way tend to be realizing that these mechanics can be used in a way that serves the story. They can work together instead of being ancillary. It's the difference between Uncharted and Hellblade. One of these things just kind of has gameplay in there because reasons. The other one is using all sorts of graphical effects and gameplay concepts to convey psychosis in the most literal. They consulted, like, I think close to 30 different people with different brands of psychosis to ensure that they represented all the different ways that can happen. And it actually opened doors for what you could do. And the same sort of thing happens with Mafia 2 and Lost Planet 3, because with Mafia 2, suddenly it makes you rethink, okay, so if this isn't obsessed about being GTA, the item shops don't have to be close. Instead, it's actually a sizable drive to get over to, let's just call him Tony, because, I mean, it's an Italian Mafia game. You go to Tony's to get his explosive Molotovs, but that's a considerable drive. You have to invest time. You have to listen to the radio. It feels like you're in the world. And they even change where your hideout is over time based on things that happen in the narrative. They don't just let you unlock all sorts of places across the city. It's way more invested in this thing right here in front of you that they want to convey. It's a cohesive whole instead of a bunch of achievements and side quests. I'm sorry, I
that
rambled
makes
way
a lot of
longer
sense,
than
and I think it's a great transition from the last conversation too, because that's how you can get some of those more serious elements in there comfortably. In fact, I didn't even think about stuff like that, where like the subtext of the other things around. You think about, like, going back to Papers, Please, the color scheme. Things like the color scheme set up the mood and set up the dynamic of that game so incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it has a compelling game loop also makes it challenging when you think, oh crap, wait, this person has a family. Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And you get those moments of paralysis during your day.
Yeah.
That's role playing as much as anything else.
And the investment of what happens to some of the characters too absolutely becomes part of the elements of role play. So I think it's kind of cool how some of the aspects of how a game can make you feel suddenly allows you to role play to any certain any levels of degree into the game, right? Like, there's a point where you become that border guard, stamping, because it's not like you're totally, I am this guard, I'm going to do this. It's just the idea that, you have that moment where you feel regret because you had to stamp denied. Like, if you have that, you are role playing, which is really neat.
Yeah, I think that might be the development answer to the problem, and that is, if you can build mechanics so as to make it extremely uncomfortable, like, or just like not reasonable to take the clearly violent, clearly not intended goal message, then you're good to go.
If I can just add one last thing, I think the most valuable lesson that could be taken from Hellblade and Lost Planet 3 is that it's okay to be boring, to not hit that certain, because there's a certain game feel that's just satisfying and fun, and that's going to be The Last of Us 2's biggest problem, because Naughty Dog is very focused on that, and you actually kind of don't want that. You want some resistance, you want some friction.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, do we get to talk about the last topic of the night?
Right.
Guys,
I think we can.
It's lighter news. It's a lighter topic. It's so much nice. The last lighter topic is that there is a recent announcement from Sony regarding the PlayStation Classic.
Hot take.
Oh my goodness.
Most of the best games for the PS1 were the obscure stuff, and that isn't on the. I get it.
I agree with this, although let's be honest here, they are so going to brew the hell out of this thing as soon as they can. It's what happened with it. So I'm just going to wait for that. Once there's that, it's like, okay, great. Then you can just have a pocket carryable thing that has Alien Resurrection on it.
Yep. No, I'm curious to see which titles are on it, but I find it interesting that we now have another console maker that is jumping on the classics bandwagon.
I mean, it's smart, and it's a perfect year to do it, because I didn't expect Nintendo to do anything this year after the SNES Classic, and people are hungry for it. They're used to this now, 2 years running, hey, I'm going to be able to enjoy some classic games. I wonder who's going to put out something.
Yeah, I'm curious to see which games they announce for it, or if they're. Well, they don't have a lot of like first party games to release on it. It's all gonna be third party. So
Crash Bandicoot. They got some of the Final Fantasies.
okay.
The Driver games were pretty much exclusive to it up until Driver 4, which Driver 3 thing that went downhill. Trying to think of what else.
I thought
There's
there
a
were.
bunch of
I thought there were some titles that were still to be determined.
there's a bunch of titles that are to be determined.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
I think they've
out
only
loud.
released
other
the
ones.
first 5, which is part of what made me leave. They're opening order soon, and we don't know 15 of what we'll be buying yet.
Okay.
I think it's because they haven't sat down and got all the licensing deals. I fully believe that they announced this before they got all the games in.
So they put the cart before the horse. Got it.
No,
This
in
is
this
so-
case, they put the disc before the horse because it's not a cart piece.
That was well played.
That was very well played. I'm
So what game would you like to see on there, and what game do you really, really want to see but you don't expect because you liked that game and nobody else did?
Legend of Legaia. I don't think that would be there. I would love it if it were. That would be.
Oh, it totally should be.
That would be the purchasing thing. Like, yep, you got me. I don't think it'll be there. I think that'd be really cool if it were. A game that I think that could be there potentially, if they can get the licensing agreement to it. RE2, or any of the Resident Evil games.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
I already said my unlikely one would be Alien Resurrection because that's the first one to ever use analog control games. It's just a fantastic game. It holds up stupidly well.
It doesn't have analog controls though. It doesn't come with.
Yeah, that's the
sticks.
problem. I don't understand why they don't have dual shock. So that's why it's like I'm not expecting that as much as I would like. It does actually have a non-analog stick version, but you don't want to play it like the
No.
version. But in what I would expect, since you've already taken Resident Evil, there's a chance of Silent Hill because Konami has been like that. The only other one I can think of that would be really good that might happen because they've already thrown in Jumping Flash would be. I didn't know it's kind of for my brain. I would expect. Honestly, Medieval could very much happen.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we go. Okay. That could be fun. It'd be fun to
I
revisit
can go
that.
for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nelson.
So.
Let's do
Oh,
Nelson.
yeah. Okay.
Mine are pretty basic. Unlikely, but I'd like to see it is one of the Tenchu games. I miss Tenchu so much.
Yes.
I grabbed a Tenchu at a thrift shop, I want to say about a year ago, and I'll be honest, I haven't actually put it into my system yet, but I need to.
There you go. Yeah.
That would be a really great thing to see, and that's part of the reason Shadows died twice, because it was supposed to be a Tenchu game, but they couldn't get a license. So From Software is just like, we'll make our own off-brand Tenchu game and then add in switchable arms and grappling hooks and stealth.
Nice.
Mega Man
But
Legends would
something
also
that
be.
might be there that I'd legitimately like to see is one of the most iconic games of the PS1, Metal Gear.
Oh,
not?
yep. Yep. Good point.
Absolutely.
Yep. Metal Gear Solid would be a good staple to have there. And yeah. Good point.
If that was, I think I'd be pretty instantly convinced
Yep.
that this would be a machine worth. Castlevania Castlevania Symphony of the Night is so an iconic, but it isn't quite as urgent as, because in contrast to everything we've seen to date from the other class, if PlayStation Mini, as it were, goes in hard on 3D classics, that would be a notable difference from the competition.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a really good point. All right, Dizza.
Okay.
Go.
And in fairness, I asked this question not having planned at all what I was going to do for the answer. So thank you for giving me some time. But if we're talking really obscure PlayStation game that would be amazing to play again, did anybody play Trap Gunner?
What is that?
Basically, it's PlayStation's response to like Bomberman. You'd go around in these with specific characters in positioned areas, and you would collect all of these different traps, and you'd set up these traps for your opponents to walk into, lose their health, and it wasn't just a one-hit thing. You'd have a health bar. Matches would run probably about 3 minutes, and they had all of these different mechanics on the maps, like having different levels, and some of the material would be homing. You could shoot with your weapon directly, and you do minimal damage with that, but your traps were what got everything going. It had a very amazing single-player campaign, and I had such a blast playing it with my friends as a kid that I would totally go back to that again. And also some very super cheesy characters, like absolutely amazing. Like if you search for Tico likes ice cream. That's the most important thing to know about Tico.
Okay.
You know, as like a player versus player, kill everyone / like assassins are most of the storyline. Like, yeah, Tico likes ice cream, whatever. So that's my obscure thing that I would love to see. I know it's never going to happen. I would, thinking about RPGs and definitive ones for the PlayStation, I want to say Xenogears, but I think the more likely scenario, since Sony's producing this, is like Legend of Dragoon.
Yep, I was hoping you would say that, because I would completely agree with that. Yep.
Everybody seems to be expecting Dragoon.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if it weren't there. It is Legends
I'd be
of
all right
Dragoon.
with another playthrough of it.
Yeah.
I think it'd be solid. I don't remember like the middle areas of the story well, and I don't know if it's because they were bad or because I was just so interested in completing the game after a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
That I just kind of skipped through the rest mentally, but it'd be nice to come back to for sure.
I think another big reason why the PlayStation 1 is positioned in a good place right now is because, at least on the indie side of things, and even on AAA to some respect, that specific era of visuals, eye dithering, the extremely polygonal models, those are becoming legit aesthetics being used by developers now. We got the in Uncharted 4, Nate and Elena playing Crash Bandicoot on an in-game PS1. We're seeing titles like Paratopic, which take that aesthetic and use it to create eerie worlds. That specific style era, and even that gameplay, because it got really weird and experimental at that time as well. I think folks it's in the right place to be nostalgic, and I'm excited as long as they never make an Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 mini. When they do that, I'll be dead. I'll be old and dead, and a huddled ashen corpse.
I figured we're gonna see like a Dreamcast or a Sega Saturn one first.
Dreamcast!
Dreamcast is already being rumored.
Yeah. See. Yep. Not surprised.
Hold on, don't break on me, Rick.
I love it because you actually, as you do that on the stream, you're actually doing that to me. But you know.
Oh, sorry.
Reach to your left. Anyway.
Bonus credit for a weird title: Vigilante 8.
Ooh. Oh, Twisted Metal.
Armored Core.
Bomberman proper.
Yeah.
Also, Suikoden.
Ooh, yeah.
So the
no one knows that one.
The potential is limitless.
Vagrant Story. Oh.
Mega Man Legends.
Yeah. Oh.
The list goes on and on.
It does.
And now our appetite is wet for a console that's going to have none of this.
Truth. Oh goodness. I think with that, we actually made it to the end of the show.
We did it!
We're alive!
That was a 3-hour show, guys. We now rival other gaming podcasts at its length, which is impressive. Good work. Before we go, we're gonna shill each other. We're gonna shill ourselves and just kind of put out there what we're doing. Mr. Nelson, let's start with you. What do you have coming up? What can we expect from you? Where can we find you?
The best place to keep track of my work, as well as my adventures into older media and terrible puns, is at Rit Nelson on Twitter. I'm Xalavier Nelson Jr. I do freelance narrative design, writing work. I also do RPG campaigns for people. That's a thing I've done before. It's weird, but I'm out for it. Aside from that, the most notable thing that's on the horizon that people take a look at is Hypnospace Outlaw. It was just displayed at EGX. It won several Game of Show awards, which I'm so excited about, and it is the aforementioned entire simulated alternate universe Y2K era internet. Did a lot of writing for it. You can wish list. Okay, so you do that. Hypnospace Outlaw.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, guys, you can see his Twitter handle right in his name tag there on the stream. So give him a follow over on Twitter.
And brace yourselves for the puns. Likes to hide them.
Well, isn't that a lot like the pot calling the kettle black?
I'm wearing the right shirt for that.
Elijah, what do you got coming up? Where can we find you and such?
Well, next week will be the conclusion of Battlefront month, where we're going to be talking about the original Star Wars Battlefront for the PS2, Xbox, and PC. We're going to finally set the score straight on that one, and then after that, in October, on Unbridged Gamer on YouTube, we're going to be talking about a variety of horror games, specifically going to be taking a look at the Fear trilogy, and why Fear 2 sucks and why the other ones are good. Spoiler warning. But besides that, you can find me on Twitter at ParadigmFallen, and also I'm on. They'll probably be listening to the text chat being posted out by Kraft, where I occasionally stream terrible games, but we play them anyway, like Blood Knights and hopefully some other stuff. Honestly, Alone in the Dark almost was the one, but I wanted to do Blood Knights more. But who knows? We're going to be looking at some really weird stuff for October, because horror games, they get weird.
Awesome. Disagee, you've got Persona 5 coming up. What else?
Surprisingly, there's a lot of Persona. Before I go into that, I just wanted to say I'm rather disappointed in what I've just learned about Nelson's pun experiences, because I am a big fan, and having known this, I feel like we have wasted a lot of potential in this stream.
Oh.
So now they're going to be coming out line by line as quick as possible, and
you're fired.
And I'm sorry in advance. So yes, a lot of Persona 5. I fear doing very inappropriate things with my confidants. That will be coming up soon. So we'll see how the goth nurse feels about me and being uncomfortable, and we'll see how many people we end up actually going on dates with. That'll be exciting. I'm planning on playing Tuesday and Thursday for sure. I'm trying to get some more streams in, some shorter things, so that you can stop on by and see things for quicker elements. And that means that I need some faster games too, so I will be putting in another game in the mix. I just have yet to figure out which one it is.
I highly recommend Spider-Man, because it is a blast just navigating that world.
Oh, I have problems with Spider-Man. I actually do. I would trade Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe for most in the DC Universe, and I don't like much of the DC Universe, so
fair.
I just started a big fight.
Fair. No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I'll take Green Lantern though.
I want to see a good Green Lantern game.
Let's see you play.
Did you ever read Green Lantern Earth 1? Oh, you were saying, Elijah?
I was saying there is a Green Lantern game. It's called Rise of the Manhunters. Let's see you play it. I'm very
Is it
curious.
good?
I didn't say that. I just said I'm very curious. You were saying
Yeah. If you like Green Lantern, have you read Green Lantern?
Earth One is the one he's asking about.
No.
Oh, you need to. It's good.
It's single-handedly, because Green Lantern has been in a weird place for a while, but that and Omega Men really restored my faith in Green Lantern as not just a character and as a critical element of that world, but also just as a philosophy in general.
So just that said, you do realize that Spider-Man is Marvel, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. I would trade Spider-Man from Marvel for a couple of characters in the DC universe.
I see.
I wouldn't change much of Marvel, but I would run away from Spider-Man.
Wow. Okay.
I'd be willing to have a mutually beneficial trade.
So we did the shout out for you, but properly, where can we find you?
You can find me in a lot of places as DizzyG. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitch, and you can find me, Dean, everything else that everybody uses. It's all the same. It's all DizzyG.
Awesome. As for myself, of course, on Tuesdays we've got Guild Wars Tuesdays. I'll be joined by Hipponymous. We'll be going back to open world bosses and such. We'll be teaching you the proper way to do world bosses. That is, if you die, waypoint back. That is the constant rate you always hear. But that's on Tuesdays here on this channel. On Wednesdays, I'm thinking about doing something new. I have a bunch of games in the backlog that have 0 minutes played. I think I want to do first time through with a lot of these games. Do first couple, 3-4 hours, 5 hours of a game to say that I've actually played it and it's not just sitting there being denied. That's what I get coming up on the channel. And of course, in 2 weeks we will return with the Newbcast Podcast with myself, DizzyG. Hipponymous will be returning back, and we'll see who the fourth guest is. We don't know yet.
Maybe it'll be a ghost.
It's a very special surprise.
Or Elijah, who knows? I don't know. Well, you don't know yet.
There's a lot of potential.
Wah, wah.
It certainly won't be boring.
That said, for Mr. Nelson, for the Unbridged Gamer, for DizzyG, and for myself, my name is Miss Michelle Jean. Thank you so much, very much for watching, and we'll see you all guys next time.